evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to bring the meeting to order. If you would all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. This is the January 17th Municipal Land Use Board meeting and reorganization meeting. The Egg Harbor City Municipal Land Use Board, in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting was provided by posting on the City Hall bulletin board and by notification to our newspapers of record. And I ask the secretary to make this announcement part of the public record, please. And Donna, please.
Mayor Chimpati? Here. Mrs. John? Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Here.
Dennis McKenna? Michael McKenna?
Here.
Mr. Molyneux?
Here.
Mrs. Torres? Mrs. Torres?
Yes.
And Mr. Keener?
Here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Mr. Manos?
Here.
And Secretary Hill.
We have three members to be sworn in. Keith Mulliner, Todd Walker, and Joe Keener. Do them all at the same time?
Yeah, we'll do it all at the same time. You can stand where you are, raise your right hand, and then each just repeat after me. I'm gonna start by saying I, and each of you state your name, and pretty much form language after that. I
Just
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and the governments established in the United States
the governments established in the United States
and in this state,
and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
and that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially, and justly
impartially, and justly
perform all duties of the office of,
perform all the duties of office of,
and then in the case of Joe, alternate number one, or say alternate number one, Todd, regular member, and Keith, regular member of the land use board, according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability.
and optional, so, and then I'll sign off on these, put in tonight, sign off, and then get back to
Mayor appointment, mayor representative.
Marie Johns, she's in Florida, she won't be joining us this evening. And then the municipal official from the fire department, John White.
Julie, do we need to swear John in also?
He's the class 2 member. Is he been sworn in?
Yeah, we usually swear in.
Okay, he hasn't been sworn in.
And Maureen too, but she's not here.
All right, now we gotta go through this one more time. Please stand, raise your right hand. I, John Garth.
I, John Garth,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and the governments established in the United States
the governments established in the United States
and in this state,
and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
and that I will faithfully,
and I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties of the office of
perform all duties of the office of
Class 2 member,
Class 2 member,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Yeah, thank you. And then we'll get another form, and we'll get it to John and sign off, and I'll sign off on that.
Congratulations, John. Legal counsel and appointments. I assigned Mr. Molyneux and Mr. Walker to go through all the proposals and to make a recommendation for attorney.
Yes, the committee met, and we are recommending that we keep the same professionals that we currently have.
So, Mr. Manos and for land use attorney.
Yes.
Any other nominations from the board? Any discussion or motion?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Nice have. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then for, city planner and city engineer, or land use planner, land use engineer.
Make a motion for Remington Burnett.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. Can we cover both of those positions in that motion, Leo?
Yes.
Board officers, chair,
Make a motion that we chair Jack Peterson.
Second. Any other nominations? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, folks. I'm sorry, Donna, we overlooked you. Make a motion that we reappoint Donna.
Make a motion.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Co-chair nominate, Mr. Walker.
Second.
Any other nominations? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, meeting dates. I'm not gonna read them, they're published on the agenda, and I'm sure that they're in the newspaper also now.
Well, they will be
Third Tuesday of each month. Do we have to vote on the publications, or?
Make a motion and a second to approve the meeting dates, and then we'll get on.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Meeting dates. Newspapers, Crestwood, City, Hamilton Gazette.
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Motion is carried. Leo, have you satisfied all of our reorganization responsibilities then? Looks like we have. We have minutes from 18 October.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed?
Abstain.
Thank you.
Wasn't here.
One abstention. Okay, new business, we have 4 informal. Leo, would you make a statement about the informals and how we conduct these?
We'll take them in order as they are on the agenda, but the informals are just an opportunity to speak to the board, get a little bit of feedback. Nothing is binding, you have to come before the board for a formal application. That's when the board will make a formal decision and take a vote. There won't be any votes taken tonight. Just an opportunity to possibly get a little feedback from the board. So,
Okay, first, Skyline LLC. Anyone here representing Skyline?
Right here.
Sure.
tell us your name and address and who you are. In the informals, you won't need to swear in on an application for development.
My name is Obadi Mohammed.
Can you spell that just so she's got it?
O-D-A-D-I. M-A-L. C-H-I.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. We're in contract, to purchase, property on 526 Chicago Avenue. It consists right now of a building that was the old school. It's at the church home. I think the father is here in the house. He's the seller. I think it's been vacant for over 10 to 12 years or something like that.
Well, I'm new here, so.
It's been at least that.
Yeah. And I know the board has heard of several applications in front of the board to try and develop an area or to convert it into different uses. And we met with the town, and we are proposing to do some condominium concept. I'd like to hand this out to the board if possible. Okay, that board?
Yeah, sure. Might be some of the public would be interested in it too, if you have access.
Yeah, we're gonna put them up here as well. So, the board is aware, this property is surrounded by roads all around. And we're proposing to make condominiums to be sold to homeowners. We've done this before in other towns. We feel that, we can bring some homeowners to the town. We work with certain banks that would, help people purchase especially the first-time homeowners. And, it will also bring variables to the town. The town could probably charge, close to $3,000, per unit in taxes, which will bring close to $150,000 a year in taxes. We feel that will enhance the area. It would be, almost a Class A, condos, 2 bedrooms. We see that it does fit on the property, and it would, like I said, it would enhance the area. Just wanna get a feedback on what the board thinks about it.
These are for sale units?
Yes.
Or rentals?
For sale, already. Rentals will not enhance the area, homeowners would enhance the town. It would be individually owned.
All of them would be 2-bedroom?
Yes. That's usually what we build. There will be 5 separate buildings on each side of the street. They'll be separated with some area in between them. The utilities will be on the side of the building. Each unit will have its own parking as well in front, so there will be no parking clearly on the street. And like I said, we've done this before in other towns. We do have banks that would work with us, and would work with the community to try to get people approved with 3% down. We're anticipating to sell them anywhere in the low 2s, so anybody can buy them with a $6,000-7,000 down. We can get first-time home buyers rates. Today, they're a little bit higher, but we're seeing them being in the 4.25% for first-time home buyers, with anywhere up to $15,000 worth of closing fees. We don't anticipate that high over here, because the appraisal will not be so much, and also the title work will not be as much.
Say there are in other towns, are there some that we could go see?
Yeah, we can give access to this one. Yeah.
Just a quick question for a point of clarification. When we met previously to discuss this proposal, I was under the impression it was on the St. Nick's side of the block. The rendering has it
Correct, back to that.
where the church is. So you'd be on where the church is now, not on the school side?
No, on the school side.
Okay, so I think your rendering
Maybe
is
backwards, yeah. But it's the same size lot, I would imagine.
Yeah.
It's 150 by 600.
So for the benefit of the board, it would be the same thing, just flip to the other side of the terrace.
Get a school.
Right. The St.
Correct.
Nick's site is here, the church is here, so it
Yeah.
would be the same thing on the other side, that's all.
So the school would be through there? No.
Yeah.
How many-
That's what I'm saying, it's, right, the rendering is actually, has it flipped. So it wouldn't be the church that we tore down, it would be the St. Nick's School. His proposal would be on that side.
What's the current zoning for that right now?
R9, which is single-family residential with 75-foot frontage. So it would be 8 houses per block, is what would be permitted in the zone.
How many residents per building?
Five.
And there's, what, one parking spot per?
One, we can fit two, if you want to get away with the grass, they can park back to back. Could fit two, but it wouldn't be so much grass there. Cause each unit's about approximately 22, foot wide, 22 to 25 feet. So a car needs about 7.
What would the square feet per unit be?
Anywhere between 1,000 to 1,100. Which will give a nice sized 2-bedroom upstairs.
That's it, they'll all be 2 bedroom?
I mean, we could build them as 3, but at that point, we need more parking. It's more expensive, you have to make less units, and we'd like to make it upstairs 2 bedroom, 2 bath, that's the way we do it. So you need about 300 square foot upstairs for each, with the bedroom, the closets, with the hole in the middle. So there will be all 2 bedrooms.
The buildings would be back to back,
Yes.
so the front of the building's gonna be facing the terrace on one of them.
They'll both be facing the streets. The streets go all the way around the property.
Yeah, I know.
So you'll have some facing.
So some are
that
gonna be
side.
facing the terrace and some will be facing the front of the street.
Correct.
And what's the space between the buildings?
10.
10 feet between the buildings and
Yes.
in the center of the property?
Yes.
Back spacing is 10 feet?
So with this driveway parking, you essentially lose all the street parking.
We're not gonna be using the street parking. We're giving them parking in front of their unit.
I think Jack's point, you would lose the available parking. If there would be no on-street parking, because of their driveway every.
Correct.
So, no way parking.
So I don't think you have enough parking.
So that's why I was asking how many units, because I mean, if it's a 2-bedroom unit, and you have
At least 2 cars per unit.
Minimum of
if you have
2
a
cars,
husband and
you
wife
have
both have a car to travel back and forth to work, and an adult kid, there's 3 per unit. Where are you gonna park them
They
all?
would have to stack them on back of each other.
Yeah, but that's gonna turn into a nightmare for the neighbors.
Right.
Because they're not gonna do that, they're gonna park across the street from somebody else's house.
So,
And then honestly, I'm concerned about the 10 feet between buildings. As a fireman in town, that's scary. If the house behind you catches on fire and it's only 10 feet from your window, and you have the same layout, so their bedroom windows in front line with your bedroom window, there's no room for a fireman to get in there and try to stop one building from catching the next building on fire.
Is there any kind of setback, Ryan, that they have to have on that?
I mean, that's something the fire and building code that we hear, because that's, none of that is permitted in zoning. Anything you do require use variance. Just to provide a little bit of background, as you guys know, we've had a couple different residential proposals over the years, but it has been a while, we've had a couple of non-residential proposals in the last year. So our developer approach is to say that a residential development, we sort of have around and say, look, I don't vote on this, you have to bring a, use variance, and you have to request use variance, and bring a proposal to the board, so if you wanna see what the reaction is for the proposal, bring it to the board, we'll have an informal and sort of talk it over, and sort of take the temperature of the board and see what anyone's thoughts are. So I mean, he's really here for you guys to comment on what you think about density, parking, spacing, all of that.
My issue is, I'm sure the residents might feel the same way, that based on everything that surrounds it, and the consistent layout of the city as it is now, 8 to 9 homes per city block is kind of fitted. I know there's some 60-foot lots in the city, but most are 75, and I think that's fitting. That gives you, when you go to the backyard, gives you, everybody faces the street, and the alleyways aren't this came up, like you said, several years ago with another developer. I think we wanted to do 15 homes on the block, and, you know, the same concern, I had the same concern then, that it's not conforming to the rest of the environment around there. It's just, it's out of place, and I'd love to see something put there, you know, but I don't know that 25 homes is the right answer.
It's just too much of a.
It's
50,
25 homes.
25 buildings,
yes.
50 units, 50 dwelling units.
It's 25 each.
10 for each, 25 on each side, so that's 50.
Oh, my. Okay, well, that, I guess this story is another concern then. I assume that was 20 single-family homes. So,
brings it up to maybe 150.
right.
I got a question between the two. You said there's 10 feet, so that if you go down the back of it, that's 10 feet in the middle, or five, one's got 5, one's got 5?
No, not back to back thing, in between the building.
How about back to back?
to back.
You have 40.
That makes
40.
sense, yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, which I was gonna answer, that the fire truck would have plenty of room to go in if we could. But really, most of these homes should be attached, they shouldn't even be,
Well,
10
I was
feet in between
assuming
them.
it was, when the first question was asked, it was 10 feet
Back to back.
back to back.
I know.
That's what 40 is better.
Yeah.
Still not great.
It's just that today, if you wanna develop this as a developer, if you wanna develop this area and enhance the area, what it costs you to build per square foot today, no builder is gonna build 9 homes in this, and you either have to sell the home for $450,000 to $500,000, which doesn't call in this area or in this town for these kind of size homes. So, basically, the board would love to see a developer to come in and develop this, and I'm a developer, I would love to do it, but the dollars and cents don't make sense. So, if the board doesn't lean into a way to give and take a little with an investor, this thing will stay another 10, 15 years, because it's not happening. It's cost of building a unit, if you're not gonna build a condominium, 1,200 square foot unit, you'd have to build a home, and, your cost is, just to build it will be close to $300,000. Forget paying for the land and engineering and site plans, and you'd have to sell for $500,000. You're not gonna be able to sell a home around here for $500,000. What the board would love to see is something that's not gonna happen. It's just impossible.
We also don't want to burden the neighborhood either, just to
Yeah,
get
'cause you
something.
said there
Right
was-
now, the building's empty, and it is being used occasionally by the church, but it's not hurting the neighborhood.
That
In
does
my
change the
opinion,
whole
this
neighborhood.
changes the whole
The whole
neighborhood.
It doesn't enhance
The
anything?
whole dynamics
think
of the
so.
neighborhood.
No, I can do the math on the taxes. You brought up that we would receive, let's say, $125,000 years of tax. Average of $18,000 per student in the school, you have 50 homes. Let's say one kid for 20 homes, that's 20 kids. In mathematics, it's gonna cost more in tax than we're gonna get in taxes to send kids through the school system. So it's gonna put a burden financially on the city as well, and all the other homeowners in the city. So, the math has to work both ways, and I think it's gotta be mutual for you as the investor, and as well as a town. And, to do it that way, the city's definitely gonna incur a lot of financial debt to the rest of the
What would
cities.
the board consider would be the most that the board would be able to approve? To enhance the area.
If you don't mind, can I ask the inverse question? What do you think is the least amount of units that it would make it financially viable
Well, we didn't,
for the benefit?
we didn't do the math, completely, but let's say if I did 1 row only, not 2 rows. Which will, for sure could support enough, parking, or even,
Well, when you talk about parking, now we just said there could be 3 cars per unit, and you got 50 of them.
well,
Yeah,
I think we
it's
just.
Yeah, now he's cutting back.
Downsizing.
Now he's downsizing, yeah.
I'm not saying it's
60-foot lot, you're talking,
So traditionally and historically, we have frowned upon high-density housing like this because it doesn't meet the zone and the neighborhood, I believe, because there's people from the neighborhood here, but I don't wanna take a lot of time discussing this because we can't act on it, but, high-density housing is not something we're looking for, and rentals is not something that we're looking for.
No, we're not looking to rent. That's not our cup of tea. I know the board just approved a 50, 60 unit
My-
rental down.
My concern is with a project like this, and I know that they're condos and all that, but I know what happens and what they turn into. They say that there's not gonna be rentals, and then the next thing you know, there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
You could put a restriction in the
Good luck.
HOA,
Trying
a
to push it.
two-year restriction that whoever buys it can rent it for the first 2 years.
I
I've
understand
done
that
that.
we can do that,
other
but,
towns. And it works, because no investor is gonna buy it for $200 and something thousand and leave it empty, for 2 years, hoping to rent it in 2 years down the line. No investor, that would mean carry the unit and cost another $50,000. It's even going to just do a different town, he doesn't have to buy the unit. So those restrictions do work. I've built several complexes that those restrictions, for 2-year restriction, when you buy a unit, you cannot rent it. It does work.
there's some advantages to this lot. I mean, you already have the city services, you have curb, you already have streets. There's a huge financial burden that isn't gonna be placed on you as a developer to have to put that in. Obviously, you have the demolition and clearing of the land, but, there's a lot of pluses to that. And even if you went to a 60-foot lot size, which there are, as I mentioned earlier, there are some places where lots are 60 feet, that would give you 10 homes per.
The last one that came residential, I think it was like 15, they had a couple duplexes and then they had some facing Camp and Claudia Street.
Yeah, from what I recall, their statement was that they didn't feel that the city families would support it, that it needed to be primarily duplexes.
Yeah, if you have a big burden just to tear the building down and get it ready to build, just start out there.
Because acquisition costs.
Yeah, that our estimate comes up to 650.
Single-family homes, and then.
We do have our environmental problems there as well.
Surprisingly. I understand that, but you look at what some of these homes are going for. 60-year-old homes, single family, on a 75-foot lot, sold.
We did duplexes on 10 lots, with the board agreed to that.
I'd have to hear
Just
more
like,
feedback from the
just like you got done
honestly.
saying that we hit you with this is too busy, so you don't know what you're talking about. You're hitting us with something that you want an approval, you want okey-doke. I mean, we just started looking at that thing 5 minutes ago.
No, I understand.
In my opinion, that's way too busy for that neighborhood, way too busy. Way out of line for that neighborhood.
I mean, even when the school and the church were full bore running, a big funeral, a big wedding, you wouldn't have that much impact on Chicago Avenue. Maybe Camden, Claudius, and St. Louis, but the residents on Chicago Avenue are gonna.
And that was predictable. It was every
Yeah.
Sunday morning, it was every Saturday evening, and, it was a 2-3 hour window, so
Yeah.
the neighborhood knew it was timed event 90% of the time, so the impact was known. This is definitely a huge unknown as to what it's gonna do. I would like to see what some of the neighbors and residents would feel about that, but
Have you spent time in this neighborhood? Have you physically walked the neighborhood?
Not walked until it's good in the neighborhood. Several times.
It's a pretty quiet neighborhood.
Yeah, very
It's a pretty quiet.
Very
area.
quiet, yeah.
And you're talking about changing the whole atmosphere.
Well, we're bringing professionals in, we're bringing, persons on buying a house, for 200 plus, 250. It's rather be a professional that have to get approved, it's not a renter.
Oh, I understand all that, but
You have plenty of renting, in this town that are doing the image of the town. I'm not looking to do that, I'm looking to
Right.
enhance the area, and I'm looking to put out a class A building.
Right.
So I
You need
think,
the whole block to do a project like that. You need the 600 by 600 block to do a project that dense. That's just my opinion.
so you're saying that a half would be workable?
I think the impact's the same whether it's 25 or 50.
I live across the street from that. I actually look out half of my house, the windows are looking at that property. And You know, I've always wanted to see something redeveloped there. I know because the school, I went there as a kid, and, you know, it has a special place in my heart, but, something like that would be so dramatic, of a change. What we have on our block, though, if we go into the 400 block, are these, duplexes. And they're 2 units that are for sale, same thing. And I think they're on 75-foot lots. I'm not sure the size of the lots, but they work really well on that block. And so something like that, you could get that many units for sure. But, there are 3 or 4 of them already that seem to work pretty good.
You talking about the ones on Buffalo?
No, Chicago, right across the street.
Because there's ones
Right
on
across.
Buffalo too, but they're not duplexes, they're row.
Yeah, duplex.
Row houses.
Oh, that's further down there. No, it's different. There's two in each unit, two in each
Yeah,
house.
but-
Middle of the block.
But they're also, they're owner occupied, right?
Yeah.
You buy, you own your half of the building, correct? But they're also on individual lots.
Correct.
Would the board consider a back-to-back, a 75-foot lot, so 70-foot lot,
I think the attraction to those are the backyards, you know, the people like the backyard part. So,
They should build, 2, 4, 8 units.
If it was 75 foot lots, 600 foot wide, would be, yeah, 8 buildings, 16 units. So,
16 dwelling units.
yeah, that's, if you're saying 75 foot lot, and a single duplex would be on it, with the potential for 8 of them.
I'm just guessing on the
Maybe
second
600.
side, it might be
Yeah.
a 60-foot lot, I'm not sure.
Sure. But, you know, using a round number for that block, if you did 75, that would be 8 buildings, 16 units. That would be comparable to something that's down the street.
Is that what the board wants to see? I just wanna go back to the drawing board to see if it makes sense for us, that's all.
So Ryan, you're saying 4 buildings on each street?
Well, no, I mean,
No.
I think you'd be 75-foot lots fronting Chicago Avenue. Each, 8 buildings, but each one a duplex with a backyard to the terrace and the front facing Chicago.
So it'd be 16.
Correct.
16.
Well, I would probably do it, one facing this road, you know,
Well, so the.
change them around, so this way they're not right next to each other, you know.
So it's.
It'll look better, and, you know.
So the rest of the town is set up so that houses face the avenues, the streets cross at 90-degree angles, and the terrace is primarily where trash pickup and rear garages and things like that. So there's not many homes around the town that face the terrace. And in the event that the church were to sell the other lot, you know, ideally we'd be looking for properties that face St. Louis Avenue that backed up to Ninth Terrace. So I mean, for consistency of development in the rest of the town and neighborhood, you typically want to see them face Chicago Avenue.
Is that something
I would
that-
say go look at the ones that are there and see.
I will, but I mean, we build a concept, and if it makes sense, why, maybe some of our present to the board and see what the board thinks about that. Or the board just wants to scratch the whole thing.
Condominiums aren't really permitted use in that area, correct?
Yeah, it would still need a use
So,
variance,
and
but.
still need a use variance, so it have to come back.
Correct.
Well, what I'm talking about is-
You need 5 out of 7 votes if you're gonna do anything but single family.
Would you put like,
Yeah, I'm talking about duplex. Yeah.
I think we've eliminated 50 units as a possible,
Yeah.
that's a fair statement. That sounds like 16 is something that the board may consider, but.
I agree with Bart, I mean, Mr. Bart, but I think that we should maybe open it up to the public and see if they're here, see what they would think about the duplex, because we can't vote on it, so.
Yeah, I mean, and the last guy that we pushed away had single-family homes and some duplexes, he wanted all duplexes.
Yeah, I think.
And I know the neighborhood at that time wasn't happy with some of the Camp and Claudia Street, it would still be less houses than all duplexes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the specific configuration, but I know we've had proposals varying from, I think 32-ish to about 15 or 16 one year. approached, said, look, it's been a while, we haven't had one of these in a long time, let's talk about it and see where everything's at.
Also, the price of buildings since COVID has doubled or tripled, prices of materials.
How many lots are in that round? How many lots?
Right now?
If buildable lots, if lots are supposed to be 60, I say by 150?
There's 10
Yeah,
lots.
so the zone is actually for 9,000 square foot lots, which would be a 75-foot frontage and 150 deep. So 10 units would be a 60-foot frontage and 150 deep. But again, the permitted would be 8 units, 8 single families of that one. That's what's permitted by zoning.
Okay, so if the study is done, then a duplex would be the best way for it to go. Rather than having 4 units or 5 units per building. And there's 5 units per building, would that be one on top of the other, or would be
No,
trapdoors? It would be real small though, right?
22 by 35. That's what condos, that's what they call it. But if the board, I'd love to hear from the neighbors, but if the board, feels like they come back with duplexes, we'll try to get, concept to see what makes sense for us, and then, as the board recommended, the 60-foot lot or the 75-foot lot, to see what works, and, see if we come back with duplexes, if that makes sense, the number-wise, it's all about numbers, it makes sense for us, and we'd love to be in this town and work with the town. And, I think personally, if whoever, it doesn't have to be us, but whoever builds that, it would enhance the area. I see it all the time. It enhances the area, it brings value, and it brings whoever's a homeowner in the area, with their homes would only go up, because now you're getting appraisals at much higher rates, and you're down the block. It just compares apples to apples. And if you have a duplex that's selling for, in the mid-2, single-family home will sell in the mid-3s. The single-family home. It just attracts a better crowd and enhances the area. But, I'd love to hear from
You gonna run it up to the town?
So it's Jack, up to you if you want to hear from the public or.
Well, I would really like to have the public talk about this, but it is an informal, and we've got many other applications to take care of. My recommendation would be, though, there are some residents, because if you did come for a variance, they would be notified, and they would come, and we would hear their testimony, and that would weigh our decision also. But I believe that there's some people that live in the neighborhood here now that I would talk to them personally and take their temperature. Because we're gonna be guided by that, in addition to the comments that you've already heard up here. Without, I know this is the problem with an informal. We can't make a decision, and we're being very careful not to encourage or discourage. So, I appreciate the proposal. In my personal opinion, this density is too high, but a much lower density where it wouldn't impact the neighborhood is certainly something that I would look at. And I can't say whether I vote one way or the other because I haven't heard all the factors yet, but I would, if on your way out, I would encourage anyone that is in the neighborhood that would like to talk to this gentleman and give him some input, that would be a good way to move forward.
Thank you. Appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you.
Maybe the diocese can give some concession, they've been holding us properly for a long time. In the interest of the community that they serve, maybe the archdiocese can give some concession, make this work for single-family homes. Because I personally feel that the neighborhood is single-family homes, and that's where it really should stay.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't know who's here.
Anyone from the public that is in the neighborhood, please feel free to take the opportunity to speak to this gentleman. So the next two, I guess, are these all together here, Ryan, the South Jersey electric vehicles and the thermal piping? It's the same property.
Chairman, board members, May it please the board, my name is Jack Clapper, I'm an attorney with the Fox Rothschild, I represent actually the owner of the building, 1602, is at Howard Street, Missouri, sitting right in the audience, Doug and Solomon.
We're going to do that.
And I'd like to thank Donna for, and also the professionals, I did have some great informal conversations with them, Donna was kind enough to present a series of resolutions. But we just wanna try to get this project back on track. Some of the facts that we found was this property, 1602 White Horse Pike, has been used for a warehouse and storage as early as 1995. And in fact, in 1998, this board, or not remember here, but where was it, 1998, did you give a use variance to the property for a light industrial fabrication and a storage use, and it was unconditional. But then after that, certain things, there were certain other approvals, where an auto body shop came in, they came back to the board, and then there was a proposal for other uses. But in my view, where it got a little off track was the following, that somehow the board at the time thought that if you change a tenant, you have to come back and get another use variance. That's just not, at least in my practice, I've been doing this for longer than I want to tell you. If you have a use, so for example, let's assume that you got a use variance for an office. Every time you change, as long as the use is still office, you don't have to come back and get a brand new use variance. It doesn't make a lot of sense, it's not practical for the applicant. If you do change, so for example, when you change from warehouse and light industrial and fabrication and storage to auto body shop, that would be a different use category, you'd have to come back. So we're in a situation now where there are two existing tenants. To the best of our knowledge, they're in there for warehouse and storage use. And these gentlemen wanted to put in other tenants. There was a golf cart individual, I think they're here in the audience, and they're using it for the same use. So the issue is, what do we need to do to, make this legal, or at least satisfy the board? We want to work with the town. They bought the building, they did get COs, and it says in there, although I realize it's not the same as a zoning certificate, it does say CO for industrial. And they really didn't know that there was a problem. Part of the other problem, quite frankly, is this board, and it's an enforcement problem, imposed certain conditions on the prior owner, like landscaping, they're supposed to put in sidewalks, and that was never done. And we're certainly willing to cooperate with the town to make that stuff happen. So that's the purpose. We do have some of the prospective tenants here, but they want to use it for the same use that was permitted in 1998. Now, there's some talk about abandonment, and again, I don't really think this use was ever abandoned, because we can show continuously there were always warehouse uses in that building. And you gentlemen and ladies on the board, you live here, you know it better than I do. I'm just telling you what I found from reading the resolution. If I'm wrong, just tell me. But I think that's really where we are. We're just looking for a little guidance about what we should do so that we can continue to do our business and work with the community to, get this building in good shape, because they want to come in and do other things with the property. There's some additional acreage that they want to do.
What part of the building is currently being used now?
So, I guess we have two tenants in there now. Yeah.
Girls and the laundry.
Correct.
On the big building, so girls on one end and the laundry's on the other end.
We had a body shop, you had Gertie's Body Shop, and then I believe we approved for 3 storage locations, or was
There's
it
3 tenants total, they wanted a 4th is when they had to do all the recycling.
Correct.
And I know a problem with the previous owner was he was moving people in and out and getting caught and
Right.
just doing what he wanted.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. We're not here to.
So there's 1 storage tenant now?
Two.
There's 2 in there now.
And then a third one moved in.
Girls.
And the third one moved in, and they arguably weren't supposed to.
The second body shop is out?
Body shop's out.
Has the body equipment been removed from the building, the booth and all that?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is informal, I don't use more in. Yeah, the answer, to the best of our knowledge, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you have a third tenant in there right now, or you don't?
We do. Yeah, what happened was, we thought, we were wrong. We thought that there was no issue when we bought it, we got a CO. we wanna be good neighbors, we wanna do what the town wants, and we wanna beautify the building, beautify the site, it's supposed to be landscape, supposed to be sidewalk in there, that kind of thing.
So Ryan's probably the only one that understands the resolution and the conditions that we
Right.
put on the property.
And probably Leo.
And we have to, we.
Right, I don't know if we
Yeah.
could maybe meet with them and, you know, and then come up with a plan to try to legalize, I don't know what you call legalize, but keep everybody reasonably happy, you know, and try to get this thing back on track. Because we do think it was approved for warehouse and storage, and that's how we wanna use it. I mean, we're not looking to do manufacturing or anything like that at this point.
How many total tenants are you looking for?
Well, see, I don't think the number of tenants matters, because it seems to me, like, I represent a lot of warehouse people. What's the difference if you have one or two, you know, or multiple tenants? But I think we could agree, I don't think we'd have more than 4 or 5 tenants to do it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Like 5 would be max.
Well, that became the problem, that there was tenants in there, and then that they were next to one another, and I know that the interior is not really under the board's jurisdiction, but, you know, they didn't comply with firewalls and everything that was supposed to be done in there, so I don't know how we came to, you know, 4 tenants to occupy the space. I think that that's what Mr. Agri proposed to us, that they were gonna put 4 tenants in there.
Yeah, the building sort of, as the board alluded to, has a long and tortured history
Yes.
with the prior owner. He, as indicated, did all kinds of things which were otherwise not permitted. I think the board started to try to tighten and narrow down, on what was permissible there. The master plan, as of 20+ years ago, you know, put it in the highway commercial zone, and the idea was, this is the entrance to the city, and we have a rusty warehouse that is not what you want first thing for people to see driving into town. So the idea was, you know, this is commercial frontage, we have an industrial park, that's for warehouse and industrial uses, we really want this property to shift towards something that's compatible with the highway commercial zone. Again, Mr. Egri didn't do a lot of maintenance there, didn't do a lot of things, but the board tried to be flexible and allow for multiple tenants. The multiple uses on the property sort of also complicated things, because some were allowable, some were not, some were warehouse, some were industrial. We had a guy building pools move in one time, just started storing pools in the back. So we tightened it down to say, look, any expansion, you know, would require another use variance to come back. And like we talked about it, if you had another use come in and it's substantially similar to the approval, they're doing pretty much the same thing, they're just, you know, storing one thing instead of another, then we wouldn't have any problem with them just moving in and meeting the same conditions. But given the operational history, we tried to put tight operating conditions to say, okay, it can't just be a free-for-all. I think we could probably meet and go through the prior resolutions and establish some guardrails, I guess, that the board would be comfortable with, so that they don't have to come back to the board every 5 minutes to switch out a tenant.
That's all we're looking for. I mean, we don't wanna do heavy manufacturing or things that would be repugnant, we don't wanna do, but, you know, the storage use and that kind of thing, we'd like to continue, and we're certainly going to do some beautification and stuff like that.
So when you say golf, electric vehicle, you're talking golf carts, snowmobile vehicles? That,
Just storage, not maintenance, or not, we're not
So
doing.
he
But
means
yeah,
like
not like
EV,
Teslas.
we're not going
That's
for
what
a
I'm
golf
saying, we're
cart.
talking golf carts and snowmobile vehicles,
Right.
correct? Is that it? Fair statement?
Stu McGinnis from South Jersey Electric Vehicles. I'm the one that has the vehicles in there. They are golf carts.
Okay.
And they are low-speed vehicles.
Low-speed.
They're disconnected and they're turned off. They do not run. They're there for storage only. We come in there with a truck, we pick them up, we get them out of there. So it's strictly for storage.
Or lead acid batteries?
That's the batteries, yes.
So, I mean, a use like that may fit with the conditions of a prior approval, but the way we got here is they moved a couple of tenants in, and they submitted, you know, a zoning application, and Mr. Hadley, the zoning officer, called me and he said, these are not permitted uses, right? He said, no, they're not. So he denied the zoning application just based off of, you know, what's permitted in the zone, you know, without going through and trying to figure out if they met, any of the conditions of prior approval. So if we have a tenant that could, you know, highlight some things in a prior approval and say, look, we're meeting these conditions, you know, I wouldn't see any problem with them moving in under that prior approval. But again, since there are multiple of them floating around, I think it would be helpful to just try to consolidate
I couldn't agree more.
Get some guide rails, and that way you guys can operate under that with some clarity going forward.
Yeah, we don't really need to take any more of your time because you have a busy agenda, but we want to cooperate. The message from us is, we're sorry that we didn't have all the facts when we moved in. We want to work with you guys.
Like,
to
storage,
cooperate.
inventory, just storage, it doesn't bother me one bit.
I would suggest, I know the last owner, we always had a problem with what portion of the building was there, like a detailed map of the building. And what, because we were told certainly, like the linen people were in one area, and then we went there for something else, and we know they're over here.
Yeah, it's always a.
So what I'd like to do with your permission is meet with Mr. Manos, Mr. McGowan, meet with the clients, and come up with something that they could recommend, and then we can move forward. Does that
I
work?
agree that it's generally, the biggest portion of it is warehousing now.
Yeah.
This is a less impact use than a body shop would.
Right.
Just don't let it, we hope that it doesn't turn into anything else, but I would like to mention that I appreciate the condition that you guys have kept the property in. The grass has been cut this year, and
Every month.
we appreciate that.
Every 2 weeks.
As far as the other conditions on the resolution, Ryan?
Yeah, so Mr. Egery continued to come back to the board and explain that he didn't have the funds to do anything, because the building wasn't fully rented. We allowed for the trigger to be either a fourth tenant, since there were it was cut up into four potential spaces, or full occupation of the building would trigger the installation of sidewalk along Route 30 and a couple of street trees and other miscellaneous landscaping, which would depict on a plan, a group prepared by Bill Stravinsky, 5 acres.
You're proposing that your clients are proposing?
We're certainly willing to consider that. For upgrade and new landscaping and sidewalks.
Yeah, I think we can satisfy that condition and just sort of funnel it down to, some operating conditions.
There was restrictions on storage outside the building.
Yeah,
Right, we
there's
would be
always been
doing that.
restrictions on that, pretty tight restrictions. But yeah, those are all the kinds of things we can sort of flush out and maybe just bring it back and consolidate, and consolidate those resolutions into one and we can use it in the board.
And then we get a fresh start.
That's it.
Thank you for your time, everybody. We have busy agenda. Thanks again, Don, for supplying us with the information. Much appreciated. Thank you, Mayor.
I just wanted to, tell us who you are and then say, Bill Halberstam, landlord of 1602. My question is, we currently have a signed lease with, Thermal Piping, who's just doing storage over there. He's, not mistaken, doing the schools in the area within Egg Harbor, and we like to store stuff in the building.
In Cape May, in Brick, and Burlington.
Sorry about that. And, I would like to know if the board would agree that we would be able to start using the facility, even though we haven't, come to a resolution as of yet, as of right now.
And that's only till June 30th.
Because of the pandemic, I'm doing 8 schools right now with Remington and Vernon. And basically you have to, they bid it out 6 months earlier so you get the equipment. This is a fan club, the UVs are twice the size of these, I got 400 of them shipping in and being sorted out over, I have fan, no hazmat, no engines, no vehicles, no external. It's strictly gonna be storing equipment in boxes in the building, bringing in a tractor trailer to my section, which is the second and third section, it's 60 by 180. And I'll be offloading from the tractor trailer, and I'll be loading up tractor trailers and sending them out. Majority of it's gonna go out June 15th when school starts.
Sir, can you just say your name?
Ron Goldsmith from Thermal Piping.
So your working hours would be during the day,
Yes.
like, whatever, between 8 and 4, 9, 7 and 5?
The guys live in Camden County and they commute, and they may be swinging by here and picking up 2 pieces of equipment.
It wouldn't be 2 o'clock in the morning,
No.
the truck pulling in.
The earliest we would be there is 6:30, the latest we'll be there is 3.
That's the Freeman Avenue side of the building?
Well, you won't see anything because the loading docks are internal. You come in not off of Baltimore, or there's a second street, you come in and you can't even see the trucks unloading or loading. It's an internal thing.
I was gonna say, all storage indoors, nothing stored outside.
100%
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like it would essentially meet the conditions of prior approval, so, yeah, I mean, I don't see an issue with that moving in under the auspices of the conditions of prior approvals, and then getting it next week. We'll work on that.
I mean, if there's conditions for a fourth tenant, as long as you can work it out with Ryan and the.
I'm renting out 2 portions of it. Each one of them has a separate entrance, but I'm renting out 2 because I need the extra 10,000 square feet.
All right, so I mean.
So mine could be divided up into 2, where I don't think the other 2 could.
Yeah, we can sort out the details, but I think for all intents and purposes, that meets generally the conditions of some of the prior approvals. So, we'll speak with the zoning officer and let you advance over that for now, and then we'll sort out the details.
Yeah, and we're willing to start, those 4 to 10 conditions, we're willing to implement those.
And the bulk of my stuff's not coming in until March. So I'm paying for 3 months, just a handful of things in there, but I just need, I went up and down the state looking for any place that could give me a 6-month rental. Because I got 40,000 square feet in Wrightstown, I'm busting out the seams.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
it. You have a great evening.
Appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, 200 White Horse Pike. Anyone here representing Jack? 200 White Horse Pike?
Young here, 200 White Horse Way.
Yes, sir. You, Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Apologize. I thought David Clement is going to take care of it, but I have the 200 White Horse Pike. I'm the realtor for George Frick. I originally, we want to go back to 1984, had a moving and storage company there. I was there till 2011, and my partner, Howard Jessup, the Jessup family that owned it, we kind of outgrew the facility. I had a falling out with the family, so I went down the street to Delilah Road, and since then, I sold the property twice, once to Al Weston, who was going to redevelop, put another warehouse in there, and he turned around, flipped it to RDS Company, who wants to bring a tenant in again. So right now, Atlantic Coast Moving Storage, which I used to own, is thinking about moving containers in there, and Secure Moving and Storage up in Manasquan is expanding, wants to put their storage containers in there, so we're looking hopefully to bring it back to a warehouse. This moving and storage company as it always was. And then we have to have a discussion later to as far as I know, Howway Commercial, originally, I guess, Howard Jessup, way back when, in the very beginning of time, started to build 2 apartments up there, which were denied. He had a habit of doing things, I guess, the way George did it his own way. But so, we have the upstairs there is totally gutted, and the downstairs in the front building, which I'm assuming retail can be done in the downstairs. I don't know what can be done upstairs, but from what I understand, they're gonna work on that, but right now, we're kind of looking just to get the warehouse back as an active warehouse.
So, Leo, Ryan, which, so I mean, that use is not permitted in the zone, and it's been effectively abandoned for 10+ years at this point. To our knowledge, it hasn't been continually attempted to be occupied by a non-conforming use consistently over those last 10 to 11 years, which is what's required to sort of maintain the entitlement to non-permitted use. So I mean, I would say if you wanted to move a warehouse or storage use into that back building, that would not be a permitted use, and it would require use variance. We actually had a developer approach 2 years ago, I'm sorry, a company approach 2 years ago. Well, that was another one, but we had, this is electrical seek a certificate of nonconformity, from the board, which is where, an applicant approaches and says, you know, this use has been here, it's been continuously operating, or it's legally intended to continue to exist, and they have to present that to the board, and you guys sort of go through the facts and make an interpretation of whether it has been continuing operating or not. So I mean, in theory, you could present that, but I don't think it's a very strong case to present, so I don't think that would be fruitful. I think the cleanest path forward would probably be a use variance for that back building as a warehouse, if that's what's designed.
What is it zoned now?
It's highway commercial. So anything that's allowed in highway commercial or retail commercial zones would be permitted uses. The same glass building, storage, warehouse generally is not. I'm not aware of any use variances for this property, any prior use variances.
That was my question. If it was approved as a warehouse, as a use variance,
Originally it was, there used to be Renault Winery at one time, and they rebuilt it in 1984, and they had the variance to make it. The city made them put that brick wall across, which is, so you couldn't see the trucks, so, I had to do some research, but I know there was a variance to have them moving, and then there was a lighting company in there a couple years back that was using for storage.
Yeah, I mean, if you could produce a use variance,
It has to be in the city records, I would think, the Jessup family had it, I don't have it personally.
I think Donald looked, I don't remember seeing it, maybe we'll check again. But
It would have been Jacob Jessup, his father, or Howard Jessup. I think 1995 is Howard bought it off, his father died. Originally it was Jacob Jessup in Pittsburgh.
yeah, I mean, this,
It was Renault Winery, and they built it, I guess, from what I understand, that caught fire at one time, and they rebuilt it from the bricks straight on up. So there had to be some kind of use, you just couldn't.
So you're
So-
saying that the moving and storage use has been abandoned for
so my,
a period of time, and that
yeah, so
reverts
correct me if
back
I'm
to
wrong, but
zoning?
my understanding is that if you have a, sort of what's commonly called a grandfathered use, a non-conforming use that does not have any approvals from the board, there's a higher standard for that. It has to be continuously operating to sort of maintain that grandfather status. If he has a prior approval approving that as an independent warehouse without anything in that front building, the standard for abandonment for that is much higher. Is that fair statement?
as, if there's a use variance on file, the fact that it's been empty for 10 years, and the same use wants to come in, and the use runs with the land, and the ordinance, we don't have anything that has an expiration or anything like that, to my knowledge. If we can't produce, if you can't produce the prior resolution granting use variance on file, then it becomes, whether it's it was in, I guess, 1984, start,
Was built, I guess, the foundation was torn down and it was completely rebuilt in 1984.
so in 1984, if the use was allowed in 1984, and and then say like 1987, that the city prohibits the use, then what you would have had, as soon as we changed the use, was a validly existing non-conforming use that's allowed to continue as long as it's not abandoned. Now, abandonment is a tricky question. The mere moving out and letting it sit there alone is not necessarily abandonment. There has to be some overt intent, overt act to abandon the use. So just mere passage of time, they may be able to come in and make a valid argument. I mean, I don't know enough facts.
So
The obvious is, I'm sorry.
if we can find a resolution that shows the prior approval, then there's no more business before the board, they can.
If it's consistent with what they wanna do, yes, I would agree.
And if not, they would have to come for a variance to have it restated that it is a moving and storage.
If not, what I think they should do is some research as to how it got there in 1984, if it was allowed in 1984, and then if somewhere thereafter, we prohibited that use. And if that's the case, then they can come and seek what's called a certificate of nonconformity and try and establish, well, yeah, we were validly existing in 1984, 1987, I'm making up dates, we prohibited prohibited the use, and then in whatever year that the building became vacant, but they would argue that just that act of vacating the building didn't abandon the use. And then in the alternative, they could say, and, you know, the board does not agree, we would ask for the use.
So who would have prohibited the use?
The city would have had to adopt it.
This board or?
We would have had land use change, we would have, presumably,
Zoning changes,
it
any
would
of
have
that
been
changed?
referred to us, yeah, it would have been referred to us. You know, I just don't know the history, whether Steve has that history, I'm not sure.
How it was passed down, I wasn't quite there in 84, 85. I was told the city really didn't want him on the White Horse Pike. They wanted him in industrial park, but the industrial park just wasn't real, and the building was burnt down. They allowed him to build it up, put his moving company there, but he had to put that kind of an odd wall, just a straight brick wall there to keep the trucks out of sight and everybody approved. But I don't have that, so it was always hearsay from Howard and Jacob, that's it to me. And I never thought to go, I didn't think I'd ever be in this position where I got to, you know, bring up the
Just to be
paperwork.
clear, it's a warehouse, correct? Is that the use
There's
that you're
nothing-
talking about?
The rear
That
building.
was
It's a
there?
solid brick warehouse, we put household goods in there.
Because I heard you mention containers. Storage
Containers are wooden bolts, or 7x7x7, and that's, you just store it for them, and you lift them, you stack them 3 high with a forklift.
We're thinking like sea boxes and outside, when you said containers, that's what I was thinking.
No,
This is for long-term storage, they package them up in a
they're
in a
wooden
box.
containers,
Yeah, yeah.
you'll see them on flatbeds
Yeah.
sometimes. They're just lifted off the flatbed, put into the warehouse, and we stack them 3 high. They're 7x7x7,
What kind of stuff are you storing?
household goods. You know, when they,
Somebody's
we were, at the time I was there, we were big military movers for Fort Dix, McGuire. So when the guys went overseas, we'd go bring the container right to the house, load the container, bring it back and sit here for 2, 3 years while they were deployed, come back, and then we'd sit there and unload them, send them to wherever they were going. You know, we're a big military mover at the time. And Secure up in Manasquan, they're a mover, so is Atlantic Coast. Atlantic Coast is doing, a lot of hotel projects, so they wanna put their containers back in the warehouse. The only reason we originally left here, Lansing was in their heyday, so to speak, and we need more warehouse for casino projects, because they're doing a lot of room changes. And that facility just wasn't good for a lot of tractor trailer traffic in and out.
Donna, is it possible that there's old files that were not in their envelope?
It would have been 84, 85, it's pre-computer, it's gotta be old.
You can become clear, either A, have a prior approval, if we don't, was this use allowed in 1982? I'm taking your word, that's why it was built.
I wasn't-
have no reason to doubt.
No, I got it, you know, they told me, and I'm gonna agree with it, just never thought it one way or the other.
So then how do we proceed, Leo, what recommendation should we make to Mr. Kelly?
I think we should do that, we should see what Donna comes up with first. If they have a prior approval, and they wanna do something that meets that prior approval, I don't really see an issue. If not, then it
No,
would be.
I'm good with that.
Maybe she'll come up with something.
Yeah, I've got no way of getting it down, we turned everything over to, all, you know, previous sale, and I was, it's gonna be hard to research anything on my end,
There's no evidence that the use was ever approved, and
Well, it must have been approved because they operated here for 10 years or more, I would bet.
84 to, 2011. I was there. Those, time. But thank the board, thank everybody for all your help. Appreciate your work with us on this. Hopefully we get a tenant back in there and get that, this kind of awful way it looks right now, but I guess it's something. Thanks again.
Thank you. Okay. application 2022-04, High Grass Farms LLC.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Kelly Carey from Passion Sign, Walter Hayden. I'm here for the applicant, Nicholas Farms, LLC. First of all, we sent the updated notice now and issued the board's jurisdiction. Are we good to go?
I reviewed it, everything looks good as far as notice.
Thank you very much. The property address here is 1520 and 1602 Moss Mills Road, lot 1003, lot 7B. It's between Brennan and Antwerp. We're familiar. The application is for preliminary and final major site plan approval for a brand new state-of-the-art 63,559 square foot cannabis cultivation and manufacturing facility. The footprint is about 47,000 square feet, and there's a partial second floor in it. The use is permitted in the IBP industrial business park zone, like the application had a few months ago. That was conditional use, this is a permitted use, so we're really here for site plan approval. We do have a couple of variances we're going to talk about. We need a rear yard variance for 50 feet to the building where 75 is required. We need a side yard variance for an accessory structure to just a garden enclosure. That's 16 feet where 25 feet is required. And we are asking for variance for parking. 80 spaces are required, and we're proposing 56, or we count the extra bonus for the 80 spaces about 60, but we'll get into that. And there's also a number of design waivers. Mr. McGowan was nice enough to provide us a memo. We have reviewed that, and there's a couple things we're going to ask for design waivers for, but for the most part, we're going to comply with the requests made and make the changes that we've asked for. But we have a number of terrific witnesses for you this evening. We have John Cullen, the CEO of Kraber, who is also CFO. We have Tom Roche, who's our engineer and our planner this evening, so we'll do the engineering and then we'll do the planning. And we have Nick Cerise, who's our architect, and Brendan McGrath, who's our security expert, and we have another attorney here, just in case you didn't see enough of us. Sean Mack, who's the attorney, the cannabis attorney for the company, who's handled their state application and all the regulatory stuff. And we know cannabis is still need everybody, so any general questions we have. And although it's not an additional use, we know you have cannabis related questions, so we've got Sean to help them with more and more as well as well.
Do we need to swear anyone in or qualify any experts?
Sure, if you anticipate everyone speaking, you can swear them all in at once, if you wanted to move it quicker, or we can do it one at a time.
Go ahead and swear them in.
All right, why don't each of the applicants' witnesses stand up, we'll go down the line, you can state names, business address, and then I'll swear the four agreements together. Five, I'm sorry. We'll start down here, I guess.
Brendan McGrath.
Brendan McGrath, and you are?
The security manager.
Security manager. No, she's still on this, but go ahead.
Nick Cecere, CECERE.
Okay. And
Architect with Merge Architecture, MERJ.
Okay.
Thomas Rush, engineer planner.
All right, Mr. Rush, and you're
Dr.
Wilson
Wilson,
and Dennis Rush.
John Cooley, Chief Operating Officer of Congress Homes.
How do you spell your last name?
KULI.
Robert Krigler, CPA, CFO, Highgrass Farms, CRIGLER.
CPA.
Yes.
Can you each raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give tonight will be the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, appreciate it. And then just so everyone's aware, the applicant's gonna present make their presentation, we're gonna ask some questions. At some point, we will open it up to the public. The public will have an opportunity to speak and ask questions as well.
We'll start with operation system, and Mr. Cohen, Dr. Cohen, would you like to start?
Sure.
If you could just introduce yourself and the company and give us a little idea about the experience and employees and the operation of the testimony. I think you did a great job presenting, so we'll let him speak, and then if you have questions or don't cover some of it, we'll try.
Mr. Peterson, the rest of the board, thank you for having us here tonight. I appreciate your time. I know it's for everybody. My name is John Coolin. I'm a doctor by trade, past 32 years, been practicing medicine, emergency medicine, and urgent care over that time. Did I ever think I would be here before you proposing a cannabis cultivation facility? No, I did not, but life takes a strange turn. I live
Excuse me, if you wouldn't mind, maybe face the public too, so they can go back. I know we
No,
have
that's
sound
fine,
here.
so everyone.
Thank you, sir.
So I live locally, I live right on Vienna Avenue, North Vienna Avenue, 118, have a 28-acre farm there. My wife's an equine vet. My son, who's in the audience with us, graduated from Cedar Creek in 2017. Lived here for 26 years and lived in Hamilton right before that. So I feel like Egg Harbor City is my home, even though officially I live in Galvin. So this is where I shop, go to butter off for my feed, all that wonderful stuff. So in the grand scheme of things, just to give you a little background as to how we ended up in this, over the past 32 years, like I said, didn't plan on going into cannabis cultivation. Over about the past 4 or 5 years, through some different experiences, a lot of patients that have seen that have benefited greatly from the medical cannabis program. And just opened my eyes to it. Okay. Didn't think much more about it, was doing that, had, know a bunch of people, patients that were involved in the program, so their lives turned around. Over that time, realized though too that as the adult use program was coming into light and they were opening up licenses for that, 52% of the people who are in the adult use programs who buy in adult use will say completely qualify for medical, but just don't want their name on a registry because they're police officers, firefighters, doctors, lawyers, they own a firearm, whatever, they don't want their name on the state registry. So there's a lot of people out there that are medicating themselves going on. So it opened our eyes, and when I say our, primarily Ron Krigler, my brother-in-law and business partner for long-term and the urgent cares and everything else, to the possibilities here. So we started exploring this about 2 years ago in earnest, and went on. And so as we started researching it and just realized that what better place as we found property in the area and everything else in Egg Harbor City to do this. Thought it was a perfect location. As we go on, as we talk about operations, bringing 50 well-paying jobs to the area, bringing new industry to the area, new tax revenue to the area, and doing something good for the community where, as I said, talking about a state-of-the-art facility, we're not retrofitting a facility like a warehouse, we're building from the ground up, a purpose-built building that's specifically for this. It will be state-of-the-art when it is built. 5-10 years from now, I'm sure things will advance further, but we're trying to do everything right out of the gate. We want to do that with the town too and be proactive. I think as Kelly mentioned, there's, we know recently there was a ordinance passed about electronic vehicle charging stations. We're going to have that in our plan for 2 charging stations with 2 ready-made more spots there. We're looking to be as proactive as we can in dealing with the town and transparent about everything. As we talk about operations, we will be a 7-day-a-week operation. It is indoor farming, essentially. In that 7-day-a-week operation, our main operation days will be Monday through Friday, 7 to 7. We don't operate overnights. We'll have surveillance on the site, other things, but that's different. But it'll be essentially 7 A to 7 P. There will be staff there on the weekends, but a reduced staff to monitor plans, to do that, make sure everything's running smoothly. We won't impact evenings, which are 2 trucks, 2 in the morning, no such thing in what we're dealing with. We expect when we're fully operational to have about 50 employees altogether, which is why we get to our parking. We talked about that. Over that, we expect to have about 20 employees in the cultivation side, about 20 employees in the manufacturing side, and the rest, the other 10, support, sales, other things like that in the grand scheme of things. It will be rare that we have 50 employees there at any one given time. It'll probably be the annual meeting type of thing showing up, because those employees will be spread over the course of the week, over the 7 days of the week, in those different things. Those 20 cultivation employees won't all be there at once, those 20 manufacturing employees, and the rest of the staff. In that, we would expect realistically 25 to 30 people to be there at most at one time on any given day of the week. So that's why we're talking about parking for 56 spaces instead, and asking for a variance there. As we talk about deliveries, other things that could affect the community going on, you'll think about, when you think about the land Our deliveries are gonna be mostly in vans and, say box trucks, like 20-foot box trucks. That's mostly because the way our site's designed, and you'll see as we go through the security and the architecturals and everything, is when these vehicles pull in, they're going to pull into the building. They're going to be back into a bay, a door will close, security is high in our industry. It's all approved by the state, these plans have already been through the state CRC for their approvals. And so that will be off the road. We expect realistically 2 to 3 deliveries a day at most, not, tractor trailers or anything coming in, those types of things. That's not what we're gonna be dealing with. It's not a high volume business. There is no public aspect to our site. It is not a dispensary. It is not anything where the public would be coming in. It's actually highly access controlled. So we will end up, just employees, staff, anyone there. In the grand scheme of things, there's a lot of things going on in security, when we wanna work with, we plan already on working with the police department, fire department, everything, do tours before we open the facility. Once we're operational, it's gonna be very locked down and tough to get in there, but we want the fire department, police department, everything know exactly what's going on, what the site looks like. And I'm gonna let, my partner Rob Frigler talk a little bit about security aspects of it before we get on to the architecture and other, the civil engineering. Any questions for what I mentioned so far?
What would trucks be delivering?
Trucks be delivering supplies for us basically, like, it's the plants are grown in cocoa husk. It's not soil, it's cocoa husk and everything, so typically that. Nutrients, we have a very sophisticated fertigation system, fertilization, irrigation system that's automated. Be delivering supplies for that, those type of things. Really just, let's say agricultural supplies for indoor agriculture.
And how does it get distributed once it's normally manufactured?
Our vans would be shipping it out to, and you'll see with the site, once it's stored securely within the site, and then it gets transported to dispensaries. We're wholesaling it to a dispensary, which is retail, and go from there. So we will only be doing wholesale distribution. So in that, where we have a delivery van going out in the morning, making stops around the state realistically, and delivering to dispensaries that we deal with, and then back in the evenings.
And you already have a license?
We are close. We put our application in December 16th and 17th for Class 1 and Class 2 respectively of 2021. It's taken quite a while for the CRC to work through the applications. There are very few cultivations, and we are amongst the middle in terms of cultivations and manufacturing. We're not going to be the largest, but there are a lot of smaller sites and everything, but we haven't fallen into social equity and other things that got chosen first in that. So it's just taken a while. We're actually in the last phase of that. We expect to hear very soon.
Well, I was wondering if this project it has to be contingent upon getting the license, right?
Yeah.
There was one other thing that was mentioned in the review letter, there will be no outdoor storage for this building, correct?
No, everything is internal, and you'll see as Rob Coker will talk about the design of facilities with security in mind, everything is internal to their, we want to stay as safe as possible, so, that's it, thank you.
My name is Rob Krigler, CPA. I'm the CFO for High Grass Farms. I did write some notes. I'm not as proficient as this is John, as Dr. Coolin. John stole some of my thunder, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the security aspect of what we're dealing with here. We have a full security plan that's been presented to the CRC. The CRC requires certain lockdown units and certain egress to the building, which is what we're complying with. We've supplied the CRC, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission of New Jersey, with those security plans. As Dr. Coolin mentioned, the vehicles will be loaded and unloaded indoors with a lockdown unit so that everything is inside the building. There's one main entrance to get into the building. It's all secure. Anyone that enters into the building will have to have security. They'll go through several different security checkpoints to get into the building. No outside personnel, non-employees will be allowed into the building unless there's security with them, and also they have passes to get into the building. Dr. Coolin had mentioned that we want to make sure that the fire department and the police department have a tour of the site to make sure they understand what's in there and what it's all about. We will allow tours by both departments at any time in the future, but we have to make sure that it's a planned visit, that we're, that the security is with them at all times. As Dr. Coolen mentioned, it is a purpose-built facility. It's got precast concrete walls, and it's designed for the security intentionally to make sure that, you know, no one can get in there that isn't allowed to be in the building. Actually, I think that's it, John, you covered most of it.
Tell us a little bit about your background, you have a lot of
Oh, I'm
experience.
sorry, sure.
I'd like to hear that.
Yes, I apologize. 35-plus years as a CPA. Dr. Coolen and I have been partners in more than a dozen different businesses, from startup through sale. We've also acquired several businesses. We own real estate, not only locally, but in other areas of the state. I am born and raised in New Jersey. I have a tax background. I'm heavy in tax. This is, as you may know, it's federally illegal. However, it is legal in the state. When we file our tax returns, there's code sections within the IRS 280E that we have to comply with. We have special software. We conform with all of the state regulations, and we monitor everything. When we monitor everything with the state. One thing that I did forget to mention is that we have 24-hour surveillance in there, both monitor when people are on site, but also remote. Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to get up our, you have some exhibits, should we have the exhibits marked down? I'm just some exhibits which we mark them ahead of time, so just.
If you want to, either way, or as you present them, we can call them we can go A1 through A2 and identify them.
Okay.
Yeah, again, Nick Cecilia with Merge Architecture. I know this is primarily about land use and planning improvements in the outside of the building, but we also did want to give you just a quick look at what the facility's going to look like, and also just make myself available for any questions or code compliance or concerns that you might have regarding the facility.
So, put it up and tell us what it is. So
this is a rendering of what the building might look like. So this is
Call that A1 rendering, or there's going to be several renderings, so let's.
yeah, there's two
call that-
renderings and then some plans.
This will be an overall.
I guess it's the overall
And then
view.
just, can we get them qualified real quick?
Oh,
Just-
sorry, yeah. Oh, you swore me in, you just threw me off. Can you tell us about your background and your architecture license?
Sure, yeah, I've been a licensed architect in the state of Colorado. Merge Architecture is from Denver, Colorado. I personally have been practicing architecture for 16 years now. Been working with a firm that does Canvas-specific architecture for the last almost 6 years now, and kind of find myself getting heavy into code compliance and life safety and those kind of aspects of buildings and facilities.
And where'd you go to school?
Ball State University in Indiana.
Exactly.
Yes.
So yeah, just a quick look at the overall view of the building. This is kind of the corner that faces northeast, as you'll see on the site plan. The main entry of the building, although it's not a public access, it's a restricted entrance. This is kind of the public facing side of the building. We're going to do a little bit of a nicer optional aesthetic treatment on the precast. It's actually going to be fluted, so it'll have like a rib texture, and we'll do some alternate treatments on the non-public facing sides of the facility, if you will. You can see the two-story portion stacked back here. It's set back as far as away from Moss Mill Road, so it's not going to have a feeling like it's a big imposing structure or anything like that, even though there are 62,000 square feet contained in the two levels. Over on the side here, you can see this is where you'll see this better on the site plan, but this is where the secure Sallyport entry and exit of raw materials and finished product will come in now.
And since you mentioned the stories, how tall are the stories?
So our overall height to the top of the parapet wall on the two-story part is 43 feet. I believe 45 is the maximum for the building.
And that's just the second story?
Yeah, just
This
this
is
portion
it.
back here. much to say about this one other than, just, dressing up the public facing side of the building a little bit, this glass, canopy entry here. The construction of the building itself with the insulated, precast walls is gonna be, highly secure. It's also gonna be highly insulated. It's gonna exceed code minimums for insulation levels. You're not gonna be ramming any vehicles into this building and getting into it. Windows are minimized. This is the staff portion of the building, so there are some windows, but they're gonna be storefront units that are rated for hurricane resistance and blast mitigation. So again, minimal points of entry into the facility and, really not any weak points, anywhere either. And this also happens to show, not in the rendering, but this is where our two, EV spaces are gonna be, and also the two future, mid-range spaces.
Is there security on site or just cameras?
Right inside that door.
Full interior and exterior cameras on every room. Anybody that comes in and out of any door within the facility, it has a face-on camera. There's also a security desk, right inside the entry, so you're gonna have to have an access card to get in, and you're gonna have to sign in with the person working the security things, anything coming out of the facility.
So two EV spaces, and then you said two future.
So make ready. So the infrastructure will be, the circuits will be there, and the conduit will be in place so that we can add two additional access, easily in the future.
And these were submitted with the application packet?
They were not, so
Oh, it's different.
because it's just site related, the site plan, the board hasn't seen any floor plans, but we just bring them along just to give you a quick look and, so we can recommend that.
So
This is the northern half of the building.
Wait, I'm just giving us, this is A102.
Sheet A1 and 2.
We do have to.
Oh, great,
Okay,
excellent,
okay,
great.
and
So
I think there's
just
the same
real-
stuff in here.
Yeah, just real quickly then, this is the staff, portion of the building, at this portion, all the, manufacturing part of the facility is located in this, southwest corner. Also the interior vault where the finished product will be stored, doesn't have any, frontage on exterior wall, that's completely internal, an island unto itself. And A102.1 is the southern portion of the floor plan. So this is all the cultivation side. Just this footprint here is what is stacked as 2 stories. This is the internal sally port that's been referenced. So this is raw materials in, also finished product out. And again, it all happens indoors and secure, and out of public view. So the facility is kind of set up for a U-shaped flow and operation. So you have the raw materials in, they move through the cultivation side of the facility into the manufacturing side of the facility, if that's where they're going, into the vault, and then back out through the same entry and exit point, which was primarily a condition, or it came out of site restraints. We're near the maximum site coverage, so we didn't have a lot of extra space to work with, and we wanted to be really efficient with site entry and exit points and kind of keep everything contained and minimized.
So even if I can just mention on here, we talked about security, there's only one entrance for staff, everything goes through airlocks even going in there, to the nature of the facility being state of the art. Any materials go through material airlock, note on this, people are going through airlocks and they're in the locker rooms changing clothes, going in, highly controlled environment, in any of this, so.
How about trash? Do you create trash inside there, or is there any?
There will be, trash in the way of, wasted, cocoa root and plant material going out, yes, and that's, ready. We have a plan determined with the state on disposal of that.
Do you use the whole plant, or do you?
No, we use everything essentially except the root, okay, the root and the growing medium that it goes in. We are looking, and currently they don't allow it, but we're kind of specking out the idea of someday recycling that and composting it. If they allow it, we're ready, I've done research on that and hoping to someday, so.
How will you get rid of that? Do you have to package it up and?
That would go, in a waste container, and they taken away by whether Waste Management, CRC, one of the.
Just
one
like
of the-
regular trash,
Yeah.
it goes away?
Yeah.
It has to essentially be rendered, non-usable, the root and the stock that's left. And so there's a process in the regulations
Yeah.
that would be followed.
Will there be a waste container on site?
Yeah.
And will that be indoors also?
No, that's outdoors, and there's no THC, or there's less than 0.3, percent THC in any of the root or other materials going out, so there's nothing.
My concern isn't that, my concern is,
Okay.
is there a trash enclosure design?
Yes.
Yes.
You'll see on the site
We'll see
plan,
that.
yes.
A103 is just the second story of the cultivation side of the facility. Not much to talk about here, but just kind of shows you the southwest portion of the facility, the southeast portion of the facility that'll be at 2 stories. And the last exhibit, A201, for the exterior elevation, just showing these for reference for the overall appearance of the building, and I'm not sure Andy, if anyone have any questions about specific features or zoning reports, anything.
Board, any questions?
Pass it on to Tom then, and I'm available for any questions or concerns.
Do you generally open to public questions at this point, or do you, go for it?
We would generally let you put your whole presentation through, if that's okay.
No?
And then, Mr. Rush, I'm obviously familiar with your office, but we'll just get you qualified too.
If you put your credentials on the record,
Sure.
people.
Thomas C. Resch, licensed professional engineer with Duffy Dulce, McMaster Resch in Galloway Township. I've been a licensed professional engineer since 1993 and a licensed professional planner since 2001. I've appeared before this board, I think once, the past 20 years or so, but I've also appeared before many other boards in the area, Seaton, Galloway, Carver Township, Hamilton, as well as many others. Thank you.
I'm not gonna interrupt you, go ahead and explain to the witness.
First, I think we all know where the facility is, but I'm going to be a little more specific about it, get you acquainted with everything, establish a, record of what we're dealing with. We're block 1003, lots 7 and 8. It's on Moss Mill Road. It's about 3.3 acres in size. We have frontage on Moss Mill Road, which is an Atlantic County road, County Route alternate 561. The property has 3 sides that I would call it right angles. The rear and the 2 sides are at right angles, but the frontage on Moss Mill Road is angled such that it's kind of triangular shaped in a way. We have a little over 300 feet length of the side yard on the west and 423 feet of side yard on the east. It's undeveloped and wooded, as you can see on this aerial map. We're in the Industrial Business Park District, the IBP. The surrounding properties, you can see, is Lot 9 to our east is a commercial facility, as well as the property next to it at the corner of Raymond Avenue. To the west of us is Lot 6, which is undeveloped and vacant. To the south of us, Lot 5, which is most of our border, is undeveloped. Lot 11 is a commercial facility, but the part that touches us appears to be a retention basin. And then across the street, directly across from the street from us is also the Industrial Business Park District and is undeveloped. A little bit to, I guess you say the northeast, there are residential houses that front on Raymond Avenue. I believe the closest house scales to be at least 300 feet from our property line.
Well, we should mark this one.
Call that A3 aerial map.
In general, the land slopes to the northeast, across to the northeast, up towards, we'll call the corner of Moss Mill Road, to the front portion of the adjacent property. We have public sewer
to the rear of us that we will be able to tie into, and public water that is along our frontage in Moss Mill Road. This is a color rendering. Basically, it's, yes, basically a stripped down site plan with the landscaping with color, so you see it a little bit better. The building footprint itself is 47,400 square feet for the first floor, a little over 16,000 square feet on the second floor, for a total of 63,559 square feet. The dimensions of the building are, in depth is 210 feet along the easterly side, 180 feet along the westerly side, and then it's 240 feet wide, total at the rear as well as at the front. Our front setback would require to be 60 feet. Our closest point is this corner here at about 103 feet, and then our other two corners are 105 and about 141 to this, obviously because of the angle of the front there. Our side setbacks are 60 feet to our easterly property line of lot 9, and then 90 feet to the westerly property line of undeveloped lot 6. And then the rear setback, the requirement is 75 feet. We are at 50 feet, and we will be seeking variance for that. The trash enclosure that was asked about is located, actually first, let me back up a second. On the building, Nick was talking about the loading and unloading area. That's this area right in here, where the vehicles will back in and go inside the building. Straight across from that is where our trash enclosure is going to be, backs up against the property line, about 30 feet wide. And that trash enclosure is proposed to be 16 feet from that side property line. As an accessory structure, 25 feet is required, and we will be seeking a variance for that setback. As you can see, we have one driveway that comes into the facility towards the westerly corner of our property. It's 24 feet wide. It can accommodate the largest vehicles that are anticipated here. They talked about vans, box trucks. There's also trash trucks that are going to be coming in. So I would say that the trash truck's going to be about the largest vehicle that would be using this facility. They're generally 25, 30 feet in length. So this driveway, as well as the turning areas in here, can all accommodate those size vehicles, as well as for the trash trucks to access this, the trash enclosure and the vans to easily get into the facility. We do not have a need for a second driveway. One of the comments in Mr. McGowan's review letter discussed that there is a requirement in a Harbor City for, based on our frontage, to have two driveways. Whereas Atlantic County, they allow you to have up to two if you so choose, but we only need one driveway in this location. It can easily accommodate the type of traffic we're going to have. Dr. Pullen stated that it's going to be primarily, it's going to be employees using it, and as well as 2 to 3 deliveries or so a day. So not going to be high traffic. It's not a retail facility where you have a lot of vehicles going in and out all the time. So this will easily accommodate the type of traffic we're going to have at this facility. We are proposing 56 total parking spaces. Depending on how it's analyzed, we can either be required to have 80 or 91. But we have 56, and I won't talk about the variance. I'll talk more about it. But maximum of 50 total employees when it's all functioning, and so that'll be the most number of vehicles that'll be on site. We want to have about 10% factor of safety in there for at least another 55. So we have 56 total parking spaces with handicaps, and then the electric vehicle charging stations. One that will be constructed is right here, and then the make ready will be right there. And that is actually the 2 make ready at least is a state requirement now. It came into effect about a year or so ago. So that was planned from the beginning. Lighting, we're gonna have, I believe, 7 20-foot high pole lights throughout the facility, to illuminate the parking and driveway areas. Landscaping, I think you can see the proposed landscaping, that we're proposing, we have some red maple trees along Moss Mill Road, some evergreen trees and shrubs, along the Lot 9, areas that are, away from the buildings, and then some other shade trees and smaller shrubs, along the parking areas, as well as, against the building itself. I already talked about the sanitary and water. The sanitary will come out the back, the water will come out the front towards Moss Mill Road. Stormwater management, before starting this project, I reviewed the stormwater, the site plans for the adjoining Lot 9, which was approved in 2003, 2004, and found that that plan accounted for the stormwater from this whole property going across, and their system was designed to accept the runoff from our property, go into an inlet in front of their building, which would then get piped into their stormwater management facility. So that was planned from the beginning with that facility, and I took that into account when doing our proposed system. Our system's gonna have some perforated pipes underground to accept stormwater from a portion of the roof runoff. A fire retention system in the rear that will also take runoff from another portion of the building, and then the rest of the site, which will be all the parking area and some more building, will drain directly into this underground basin that you see in this area, which will also take water overflow from the fire retention and the perforated pipe, and then discharge from it will go out in the same area above ground, overland to that inlet on the adjacent property, at rates less than what is allowable. And I believe that's what I have in terms of.
Can we, in the review letter, they also talked about the sidewalk in the front, and we're gonna request a waiver from the sidewalk requirement?
Yes, there, in Mr. McGowan's review letter, he noted that sidewalks are generally required, but for this, let's check the notes here.
I think that the waiver, sidewalk provision has a specific waiver, portion of it, and basically it says if there's no residential development proposed, it's an industrial area, and the neighboring uses are all industrial, and certainly we're not encouraging people to walk to this property, it's a security issue, we don't want them not to be unfriendly, but that I think it qualifies under the request for a waiver for sidewalks, there aren't any others in the neighborhood, right, and it's industrial on both sides of the street.
Correct. Industrial, there's no sidewalks on Moss Mill Road in any part of the Harbor City, so we are requesting a waiver for that.
Maybe just mention the sign in the front.
Yeah, we have a freestanding sign proposed near the entrance, 20-foot setback as required. I believe it's gonna be 20 feet in square foot.
6 feet tall.
And 6 feet tall, yes.
So that fits within the language requirement.
Correct.
And from the review letter, the lighting is gonna comply with IES standards?
Yes, it will.
And there'll be shielding on it, it's shielded, the fixture that's proposed is a shield.
Yeah, there's half-side shields on all the lights. And I think I gave testimony regarding the driveways and the spacing. I'm not sure if that is adequate, Brian, but you can let me know if I need to say any more.
Make the case.
Okay.
There's one thing about a deceleration lane, that's an ordinance requirement. That would be for the eastbound traffic on Moss Mill Road. It's required to be like 200 feet long, which would probably take you back to Kenworth Avenue. That's not needed for this facility. We have a little bit of, about 25 foot of widening on either side of the driveway. But with the type of traffic we're having here with employees that know the facility, there's room to get off the road. There's at least an 8-foot shoulder for the entire length of Moss Mill Road up to Kenworth Avenue. So that, in my opinion, the deceleration lane is not necessary for this facility. And it was not requested by Atlantic County in their review.
necessarily checking things off as we go through.
The Sears two storage facility on the back of the property, is that an enclosed or is that just a fucking pad?
This is a pad right here. I believe it's some type of a tank. I'm not familiar with it. The tank will be placed on it.
So one thing that I don't think we touched on was the requirement for planted landscape strip, property lines and landscaping generally.
Well, I think we,
I-
represent the one, you can also mention that.
Yeah, and I gave a general description of the landscaping, and then there's also landscaping around the fire retention system, which is all specific for that type of use. You're talking about other landscaping.
Yeah, just, we'll go through my letter later.
Okay.
That's just so I know highlight what I go through. Yeah, that's it, and I'll go through a couple of points later.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. Is that gonna be open entrance or is it gonna be with gates and guards?
No, open entrance. It's like just like any business driving in and then driving out.
Okay, so anybody can drive in, I guess the security part deals with entering the building.
I believe that's correct.
Is there lights in the back of the building?
No, I don't, probably except where there's any egress doors, that's probably the only lights. But there's no pole lights or any other large lights on the back.
The walls of the building won't be lit up then, it'll just be over a door.
I believe so, yes. Here. Is that
Yeah,
correct? At each door.
Architect is saying this. There are 7 holes within the parking area for the parking area.
Yeah, we're illuminating the parking area, but not the back sides of it.
Is there any reason for that, why you wouldn't light up the back of the building or the side of the building?
I don't think it's required, it's needed, I mean, if the board wanted it, but I would think less, less glare.
I'm thinking for security, yeah,
If there are no,
Yeah, you'll be out there for hours.
If I can just, partly is to just blend into the environment a little bit more, a highly lit building all around with the security of the building, where I know, Mr. Argy mentioned, you asked about fences. With the way the building is built, someone would have to run a tank into the building to incursion. We can't prevent everything, but we can delay people long enough for police, security, everyone to get there. And that's the whole idea. Someone would be out there for hours trying to get in, and we would know about it with our security system long before then. So we just want to make sure it blends into the background and not be highly lit up. You notice there's no signage on the building. There's a small roadside sign to, basically for, delivery vans, other stuff to know exactly where to turn. But we want to keep it as low key as possible, just to blend with the environment.
Your outdoor security system, does that take care of the parking lot and the exterior of the building?
There will be cameras and stuff on the outdoor areas and parking lot, yeah.
Is the area that is not being lit, the adjoining lots, are they undeveloped?
From here over is undeveloped. This side has a commercial building right here. I don't know if you can kind of see.
But no residential?
No residential are over here. This way.
we do have a security person from the company that's gonna talk, and pretty much after Colin's covered a lot of that already, but we do have a security person coming up. And I've told them not to put the whole security plan on because that's a security issue. So we're happy to answer any questions, but we purposely didn't put the full details of where all the cameras are because this is a public hearing and all these documents are public and anybody can open them, so don't want you to think we're hiding it all here, we're happy to answer questions, but I've also said, don't give away the state secrets in the application.
Okay, I have another question. Are there facilities like this built anywhere else in the state of New Jersey or outside of the state of New Jersey? Facilities such as this that you are planning on building on Mossville Road?
If I can answer, as we know it in the state of New Jersey, no, this will be a state-of-the-art facility for New Jersey. Most of what has been done so far, if you look, Egg Harbor Township has a cultivation facility. It's a retrofitted warehouse. what we've learned through our research and working with more experts in cannabis than I ever knew I needed in life, is that we really do much better by building a ground-up purpose-built facility than trying to retrofit something and running into problems down the road. Most of the issues you run into are trying to retrofit something that was not designed for the purpose. So this will be, groundbreaking in New Jersey. The rest of the country, I don't know, Nick, you may be able to answer that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's, combining the functions is not uncommon. It is rare to have a client that chooses the path of building a purpose-built
But again, are there any other facilities such
Absolutely,
as this
yeah.
anywhere?
Yeah.
In what states?
Personally, we've done projects in, Michigan, Ohio, Florida, Alabama, Colorado,
California?
California, we do have a facility in California, Oregon, Oklahoma, Arizona. So yes, it is something that's being done all over the country, and combining the cultivation and the processing functions in one facility for efficiency and to create a wholesale product is a business model that's been used elsewhere.
Yeah, we want, if you're aware of any more questions, we want, the, security testimony and then we go back into the plan. The plan has.
If needed.
Yeah. If there's anything to add.
I don't know that there is anything to add. Again, my name is Brendan McGrath. I'm a licensed armed security officer in the state of New Jersey and also in Connecticut. I'm a former first responder EMT, working on a critical care ambulance for 5+ years. One thing I just want to stress is the purpose-built nature of this facility. I've heard each of our team members and each of our witnesses state that every aspect of this building, every inch of it, is designed with security in mind. The goal is to not have any inch of this place go unnoticed by us, by our security system. Again, 24/7 monitoring, we'll have security on site, and nobody gets to the door without our permission and our say-so.
And in addition to what you're doing and working with the fire and the police, the state is also gonna do inspections, correct? And you have things you need to comply with the state.
Yes, we have a full security plan that we've already submitted to the state, and that is under review and approval by the CRC. And, it's gonna be a very close relationship with the state, with the CRC, to make sure that we are in constant compliance with them.
The security carrying weapons?
That is still to be determined. We certainly can. We're gonna work with the police department, get their feedback on our security plan, and see what they would recommend. Thank you.
Now you're the planner. Now he's the planner. Do you want to stand here, or you?
We have a total of 4 variances that we're requesting. I'm gonna break them down to 2 and 2. The first 2 would be considered C1 hardship variances due to the unique shape of the property and the topographic conditions. And the 2 variances that fit that, one is the rear yard setback. Earlier I described that the rear yard requirement is 75 feet. Our building is at 50 feet. And then the second variance request is for the trash enclosure, right here to be 16 feet from the property line when 25 feet is required for an accessory structure. As I mentioned, the property has a unique shape, with the triangular portion up at the top, where we have a difference. Our depth is 110 feet longer on the east side compared to the west side. So that has a little challenge with setting everything up in the facility. And then our topography slopes to the northeast. So so that makes the placement of the main basin essential to be in that area to accept runoff going downhill, as well as discharging in the same location that it's going right now. So because of that, when placing the building, if we would have tried moving it closer to the road in order to meet the rear setback requirement, it would have made the stormwater system design much more difficult and impractical for this facility. And having the building a little bit closer to the rear has hardly any effect on the neighbors. As I stated before, most of the back is undeveloped, and then the other portion is a retention basin for the commercial facility. So the rear of the building, of course, is a very passive, there's going to be practically hardly any activity back there with just an egress door and then a fire retention system. The side accessory setback for the trash enclosure, placing the basin in the areas that I noted is practical design purposes along Lot 9, which creates a more passive space along the Lot 9 property and keeps the newly developed areas closer to the undeveloped Lot 6 to the west. And that's why the enclosure is 16 feet from that property line. And it allows some maneuverability of vehicles for the trash as well as to get into the loading area. The second set of variances are more C2 substantial benefit variances. One is parking, 56 spaces that we propose, whereas either 80 or 91 is required. And the other is we are proposing 2 loading spaces rather than 4 that is required in your IBP district. The 56 spaces, there's no outside customers, I think, as we've heard before. So all the parking is for the employees. As Dr. Cohen stated before, we have a maximum of 50 employees. So the most number of people that will kind of be there is 50 at a factor of safety of 10%. So maybe you want to have 55 spaces. We're proposing 56. And with that, we have a benefit of not adding any unnecessary impervious surface. If we don't need to add more asphalt to a location, there's no reason to do that. And it gives us the opportunity to provide a little more adequate light, air, and open space as an added benefit. There's no substantial detriment to the public good, the neighbors, and no substantial impairment to the zone or master plan with this parking variance. And then for the 2 loading spaces, very similar. We only need 2 loading spots instead of 4 as required based on this type of use. And adding more loading spaces would add additional impervious surface, and that would be it. It would benefit is having more adequate light, air, open space.
We're also requesting several waivers and exceptions, and those are not part of the zoning ordinance, they're part of the land development ordinance, those are waivers, so they don't meet the same criteria to be explained. But the waivers we're requesting are appropriate for the application that we presented. They make for a better overall plan, and complying with them would present a better application.
Yes.
And so as far as the purposes of the municipal land use law that this supports, we would go with supporting a light area open space.
Yes, that's correct.
And perhaps G, provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of uses as well.
Yes, I think so.
Unless the board has any other questions, or Mr. Manos has any questions, I think that's all we're going to plan for testimony.
Any other testimony from any of your professionals?
You're open for questions, and if you want to go through the review letter, we're happy to do that.
Mr. McGowan?
Sure. So I think the variances were well outlined, and so 2 variances. And so rear yard, side yard for accessory, number of spaces, and loading spaces. There's a couple items go to the technical review section of the report that I just wanted to touch on. One is requirement for sidewalks. I know the board has been pretty stringent on a lot of applicants, but as the applicant noted, there are no other sidewalks on Mossman Road, so that would be difficult for that frontage. And the nature of the business is not conducive to pedestrian traffic, so I think that's a reasonable request. The stormwater management we didn't really get into. The stormwater management will require revised calculations. My suggestion to the board, if we're comfortable with everything else, would be to sort of let us work that out administratively, as long as they can meet, Highlands, DEP and city's ordinance requirements, without having to make any major changes on site. We anticipate they may need a little more basic depth or something like that, but I don't think they'll need to expand the footprint and the configuration. So as long as, the board would be comfortable with that, we would sort of allow them to tweak the depth of the basin as needed to meet, the storm management rules. One of the other requirements of the ordinance is a planted landscape strip with a minimum 5-foot wide along all property lines. I don't believe that to be typical throughout the industrial park. There's actually another requirement for, tree planting requirement. Canopy trees, 1 2.5 inch, or, 1 2.5 inch to 3 inch caliber tree per 30 linear feet of property line. And then evergreen trees, 1 6 inch to 8 inch tall evergreen per 20 linear feet of property line. I didn't do the math to go out and calculate, but I'm pretty sure they don't have the number required by ordinance, but again, that's not typical to the rest of the industrial park. You go look at the rest of the, developed properties there, it doesn't appear they strictly meet that, and I think they requested that, because they already did it from. So, just something else for you guys to consider, landscape requirements. Some of those that came up in the review is listed in the industrial business park section is a perimeter adjoining each building shall remain clear except for plantings and pedestrian walkways to permit access of emergency vehicles. I suggested the applicant meet with the fire marshal and the fire department potentially to discuss access to the facility. It's a rather large building. There's only really drive aisle access on 2 sides. I know that that's come up at prior hearings and prior applications, is access around the building. I know that multiple fire department members on the board, so I'm curious to hear if you have any thoughts, concerns, questions about that. Let's see. So we can circle back to that when I finish up the rest of the report. A couple just miscellaneous, we had general comments that I want to touch on. Regrading the Moss Mill should be coordinated with the county. It sounds like you already have county site plan approval, or
We've submitted and we've, had review comments that we haven't addressed yet, because we were gonna do it at the same time we address these. There was nothing major.
So should already working with the county on that. There's a generator and transformer pad area shown in the front of the building. There's no real detail provided for what's going there, how big it is, any screening, any of that. So it's just something I wanted to highlight. Typically, that's something we require to be screened. And we don't really have that much information about the dimensions of what's proposed there. That's probably because you don't have that information yet, but.
We can put one more record if you want some more.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful just to discuss that. And the last 2 things were, again, site circulation for fire department and site security plan, ultimately to the police department once you have that. Other than that, they did a good job going through and addressing all the things we highlighted in the letter and highlighting the variances. So, easy for me to answer those questions.
Board members, questions?
Does the city have a sidewalk fund?
And what?
Sidewalk fund?
Or maybe not.
I would encourage council to, give Neverland Township to adopt their own fund. Basically, if we're gonna give a variance instead of saying 4, they contribute 25% of what the sidewalk would cost, and gives them a fund for the city to use for whatever we want. I know Galway Township and Egremont Township have that. I don't have a problem granting a waiver personally, but on the same hand, typical business in every other community is there's contribution to a sidewalk.
Traditionally, we've never given sidewalk waivers, but we have started, I think we've given 1 or 2 possibly, but we never used to, so that's why it really wasn't an issue.
Yeah, other than the industrial park, I can't think of any of them.
And I'm assuming you're using all city water for your grow and everything else? Okay.
And the building's fully fire sprinkler?
Yes.
I did see there's a fire pump room, so I'm just assuming it's
Yeah.
fire sprinkler.
The-
I mean, as far as the access to the building for the fire department, yeah, the driveway's tight, but there's really not you wouldn't be able to make the turns on the sides of the building either anyway. And our typical, you know, like staging or collapse zone is 1.5 stories, 1.5 times the height of the building, so for the most part, we're not gonna be that close to that building anyway. Right? Yeah, it's, the lot's tight, it would be nice if it was bigger, but I think they're kind of stuck the land.
Even if you could get there, you probably wouldn't,
Yeah.
it's just not safe. That's fair. And I mean, given the use class, it's not like it's gonna be cool.
Yeah, I know that there was, the old Acme site, we had a discussion a couple times, because they were, that parking lot was big enough and the way they were positioning things. And,
Sure.
But this is kind of is what it is, and the nature of the building, I was, hope that the system they have inside extinguishes it.
Would be pretty robust.
Yeah.
Questions, any other board members? Based on the history, I would just mention to make sure you understand, we have a clay bed when you do the retention ponds. We've had problems in the past with retention ponds overflowing and not draining properly. It's down pretty deep too.
Yeah, we required to do soil test pits for down A, we did out here. I think there was one or two small sections where it found fairly deep, and I think we are calling for it to be removed and replaced with sand.
Do you know how deep they tested?
It went down at probably 10 or 11 feet below existing
Deeper than that.
ground.
Deeper than that. It's 20, there's 25.
There's
There
pockets
was,
will-
remembering reading the report, one of the test pits was down over 25 feet, the others were in the 20 feet range, and we could fold it and share it.
This is just a suggestion to head off any problems in the future, but you need to have some deep borings done,
Yeah.
because below that, where you stopped is where the problem happens.
Yeah, we're pretty infamous for clay lenses.
And you don't know where the lens exactly is gonna be, but 20 feet is not deep enough. You need 50-foot boring beyond the 20 feet, so you don't have a surprise at the end.
For the drainage facilities, you can only go down really as far as a real big backhoe will go. The other, maybe the other type of borings that Dr. Kuhn is talking about were ones that were done for the building itself. Those were done for the building
They
design.
did test borings for the building
Yeah.
footprint, so they would have been,
Yeah, geotechnical borings for the structural design, foundation design.
and so there would be a report for that would show the
There is.
layers of, do you know how deep they went with those?
I don't recall offhand, but we could get that to you.
And we'll take a look at the testing for stormwater management facility. They're required to go a minimum of 8 feet below the bottom of the deepest facility, or 3 times the still water depth, whichever is greater. Two times the still water. Either way. So that's the area in which you have to do physical test pits and testing for infiltration rates and things like that. I do think it will be helpful to review the borings done for the building itself, just to sort of confirm that there's no mysteries below that. But typically, if we're down in the groundwater, and you get, fine groundwater and you get down a couple of feet, as long as you can get it to the groundwater, it shouldn't, it's typically when you have the lenses that are, have a perched groundwater table or something like that, is where we're running into the larger problems that we've encountered. They do have a note in, on the plans for the basins or the test pits where they had, material which was not suitable, to replace it down, I believe, to or past the groundwater tables. But, those are the kind of things that I'm sort of suggesting we would sort of administratively make sure we get right before.
I've heard that said so many times that we went down the required depth and then there was problems.
Yeah, we had that discussion with Dollar General about how they needed to have their area larger, and they said, read the rules, and it's full of water all the time, so yes. We'll be the first or last to have that issue.
We appreciate you letting us know.
Easier to plan for it than it is to fix it after the fact.
Absolutely.
How soon you guys prepare to start, if you get approvals from the state and everybody else?
As soon as possible.
Do you have timelines? Approval?
We have a certificate of filing which allows us to come here, yes.
Yeah, sell a couple things to sort out there with those.
Do you wanna move on the generator?
What's that?
Do you wanna launch on the generator?
Yeah, I mean, the generator transformer pad and any proposed screening for it, I think would be beneficial to the board's knowledge.
You can.
I can say that there is no screening shown on the plan currently, but we do have a minimum of 3 and 4 to 5 feet clear around that whole landscape island, so there's plenty of space for working clearances on the equipment and screening to be put in place. Also, as far as the generator is planned right now, it's a performance spec, but it is spec'd with an enclosure, and that enclosure could easily be acoustic rated if noise is a concern. So that's something that would be reviewed by the building department and also reviewed by our firm and by the MEP engineers at the construction submittal phase, and make sure that, the unit that's spec'd not only meets the electrical requirements, but also is shielded from weather, the coastal condition we're concerned too, so it's definitely gonna have an enclosure, and it's fairly easy and common and straightforward to make that an acoustic.
Any other board members before we open it up to the public? Members of the public, would anyone like to be heard?
I got a question. Ms. Torres, there are buildings like this, by the way.
Yeah, gotta get your name and
Benjamin Risley,
I'm
twenty
sorry.
fifty-eight Liverpool Avenue.
Say it again.
Benjamin Risley, 2058 Liverpool Avenue.
Mr. Risley, you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
So help me God.
Thank you.
So, you failed to show any exhaust. Is there exhaust in these?
Sure.
Because I just was,
Yeah.
if you go to a facility like this, now we built one in Ethos in Monroeville, PA, right across from Trenton. You will get high being outside these things. I think it's a good thing that you're coming here, because the revenue that the gradables that we're gonna get will be great, and I don't know what the other benefits are, but the exhaust from these, when you get a southwest wind going, Renault's gonna be high. They're gonna get high. That stuff gets you, because I had such a contact high from working on these buildings, that it is, you will get, I don't know what, you can address it, get some sprinklers in there or something, but you're gonna need, you didn't show any exhaust in any of these plans at all. But you're drawing a lot of air out.
The MEP engineering isn't included in this, but I can speak to it a little bit. And also,
Thanks.
just scientifically speaking,
It does smell good.
any odor that comes out would have olfactory effect and would smell like cannabis, but it wouldn't be combusted, so you actually couldn't get high from it, but even if you felt like you did. But,
I worked on the site for
carbon filtration is required by the CRC and also pretty much every state regulatory commission. So that's the carbon filtration on any exhaust exiting the building, and it's aimed at making sure any odors from the operations, most regulations say they don't want it to extend past the property line, which is winds and all kinds of environmental factors. It's pretty tough to handle, but that's pretty much the metric that most places put in place. So this facility not only has that, but they're also going above and beyond with indoor air quality and adding additional filtration and monitoring of not only odors, but also dust particulates on the inside of the facility. So the clients want to make sure that their employees are safe, and that indoor air quality is where it needs to be. So the air is actually being treated inside the facility, it's being monitored real time. These filters are kicking on when they detect odors or the particulates in excess of acceptable parts per million. So there's a second layer of filtration and odor control that's being voluntarily added to the facility above and beyond the carbon filtration that the CRC would require. And then just one other comment about the carbon filtration. They plan to contract with a company that regularly maintains and changes out those filters. That's something that some owners don't follow up on, and it's only as good as the maintenance of the system. So they will be engaging in a contract with a company that regularly monitors and changes out those filters to make sure that they're working at their design capacity.
Anyone else from the public?
I had one, I was just curious,
Mr. Ross,
Bob Ross, 601 St. Louis Avenue.
Mr. Ross, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I'm gonna
testify, I'm just going to ask a question. Just curious about the water, he brought up the water use. Is the water that you use in the facility for, the plant, you're growing plants in there, right? Is that recycled over and over again?
To an extent with the fertigation system, yes, there is new water use, but we reuse as much as we can through there with
And then
that
what you
system.
lose, do you have to filter that water before it goes into the wastewater system?
It is, we actually have, and Nick, maybe you can speak more, we have a reverse osmosis system that will be working within the facility to cleanse the water.
Because you are gonna be washing, fertilizer
Right.
type material in that water as it goes out, and not get in and leak out our leaky wastewater pipes around here, and we've been growing all kinds of other plants, because all the weeds we got growing around where our pipes are our clay pipes are leaking.
That's
We-
gonna be
We
fixed.
fertilizing all the rest of the, weeds we got growing. That's why I was wondering, if you filtered the water as it came out, and I was curious about the water use, that you'd be able to reuse as much water as possible.
I forgot, we've been dealing with this for a year and a half now, and, I forgot, but it's actually, the water usage is not as much, it's not hydroponic.
Right.
It's that we're irrigating, in the cocoa pots and the growing medium and everything, so the discharge as well as the water use is not as much as you would think as to when you think about a hydroponic facility, so.
I would actually think that you would benefit by recycling as much water as you could, so you wouldn't have to keep buying the same amount of water over again. Just curious. I was also, just for an instance, we had trouble, I work for a utility company, and I had to do a substation down in the southern part of this town. We had problems with runoff water. We actually put a bladder system in, too. I don't know if you've ever heard of those, underneath the soil to hold the water underneath. We put one in down by the railroad tracks down there. It's a pit, but we have a bladder system underneath. It helped us out a little bit, but yeah, we couldn't get the water perfect. And everything's considered.
Because you didn't break through the clay.
I don't know how far down we would have to go to break through the clay. And the railroad had a lot to say about things that we were doing over there. But, yeah, I know that even out at the school, we had an irrigation, we had the school building in Cedar Creek, and our retention pond, when we finally had them come out and rework the pond because it wasn't draining, there were so many fish in there, that's how long the thing had been around. It was just, it looked like a sardine can with fish, that's how many were in there. And you wouldn't think you'd get that in a retention pond, but the ducks come in and they bring the fish with them, so. Ms. Hesser, did you want to say something?
I understand I can't. Thank you anyway.
Anyone else from the public? Yes, sir.
Greg Carnicel, I'm the lot right next door where they're talking about the
If you
water.
would, sir, please
Sure.
stand up and,
You can come up, just because we have to pick you up on the audio, I'm sorry. Greg
Carnicel?
Carnicel, and your address?
Well, most specifically, I'm the next door lot, lot number 9, lot 1000. Lot 1000.
Doesn't have a property address that you know,
1620 Marsh Mill Road.
1620 Moss Mill, and Mr.
But it's
Parsons.
easier to get in touch with me at 1450.
That's all right. You swear to tell the truth?
Yes. I just received notification of this. I had preliminary discussions with them about the water, and my engineer brought up some problems. I've had 2 days to review this stuff. My lawyer is on vacation because of the holiday. My engineer didn't have time to look at it. I can't see, since they don't even have their permits, why they're looking for final approval, but I would have to ask the board respectfully to, approach it as, preliminary with final approval. It'll avoid a lot of legal fees and everything else if it doesn't work the way I'm fearful it may not. The numbers have been changed and my engineer just hasn't had time to review it. And as it is in the summer this year, when we had those heavy, pours, we had a lot of water filling up my retention basins. Anybody who goes by my properties know 3/4 of it is retention basins. And when I was approved, it was for the lot to take their water, but it was 100% pervious. Now, we're looking at a building that's 47,000 square feet, roads, parking lots. I'm not sure that any of this is still, you know, my responsibility, first of all. And second of all, that I'm not gonna be flooded out, you know, in the future, and then I'm left like, you know, with a water problem that is not of my making. So before, you know, I think we're putting the cart before the horse, looking for final approval. I'd like to get like, you know, some time for my people, you know, my professionals to do some analysis and then go from there. And I don't really think that handling the water administratively is very transparent, and I have a real issue with that. I think that, you know, I should have ample time to review it.
To review their water calculations?
Yes. Because it's coming onto my property. But it was, you know, basically, I had to provide for that, you know, when it was a pervious property. Now, it's completely impervious. And I know they have their own water systems and stuff, but in their, you know, resolution, it clearly states that they'll be using my inlets.
Can you speak to that, Brian?
Yeah, so the city's, states, and Pinelands rule all require them to reduce outflow rates leaving the site in the 2, 10, and 100-year storms by 50%, 75%, and 8% respectively. So in theory, in the 100-year storm, you only have 80% of the discharge you have now from the existing condition. There were some issues with the routing calcs and some engineering that needs to be sorted out, but to be frank, we don't go through them at the board level ever. You know, we address things like calculations and technical requirements administratively regularly, because it's typically not of concern to the board members. You guys, you know, you care about the site layout, how it operates, where things are, not, you know, that stormwater management numbers work. You guys sort of take that as a given, because that's a requirement, and that's, you know, what I'm here to review and make sure happens. I mean, I'm happy to meet with Mr. Carnicel and his engineer. You know, I have no problem seeking third-party input on, you know, if they have concerns. But I mean, the applicant's required to reduce flows from the site. They have, you know, if they meet those requirements, they're allowed to proceed. That's just sort of how the rules in the state work. Mr. Carnicel's property is downstream, so yeah, their discharge would be at the front of their site near Moss Mill Road. And he does have some inlets that are sort of the low receiving point now in front between his building and Moss Mill Road. So that's where the discharge is. My understanding is that the history of this is originally they had the site built a little lower and tried to connect directly to some of that infrastructure, and were not permitted to do so. So they ended up raising the site and are now discharging overland. They're certainly allowed to do that. They can't prohibit development on the site. You have a set of development rules that you have to operate in, and there's requirements, then that's how you move forward. So I mean, you know, it's up to the board how you want to approach it. That's my sort of recap of where we're at.
So how does the dispute with his engineers, their engineers, going through on the plan, how's that resolved?
So if their plan fully meets all state and city ordinance requirements, they're allowed to do that. That's how the rules work. You know, just because your neighbor doesn't like it, doesn't mean you're not allowed to build it your site. So if they find a flaw in the calculations and they're inaccurate and they do not meet the state or city or Pinelands rules, then, you know, by all means, bring that to my attention, and work with the applicant to get it corrected. If they do meet all of the rules, then, you know, that is what it is.
And if the water doesn't flow correctly, how's that handled?
It's the responsibility of the owner, or the applicant initially, and then the site owner to maintain and ensure that the system is performing as designed. If the basin doesn't drain in 72 hours, it's failed and has to be remediated. If it doesn't perform during storm events, if discharge is greater than it needs to be, and it doesn't match up with the calculations, you know, there's recourse for that. But it's the owner's responsibility to maintain the level of performance from the design.
And right now, everything meets that.
Well, no. That's kind of what we had talked about initially. Is there's some revisions that need to be made to the calculations. I don't anticipate that they'll require revisions to the site. It may require some additional depth in the basin, not a change to the footprint. So yeah, I mean, state's rules. But I think that they can, given the footprints that are shown with some revisions, calculations, and some corrections of the so again, my recommendation would be that if we can work it out administratively with the same basing footprints and same configuration of the infrastructure, with some tweaking the basing depth, I would still suggest that we not have to come back to the board for that, because it doesn't impact the site plan. You know, those kinds of things are not things that we discuss at the board level for any application typically. So if they're able to meet the rules without tweaking the things that you typically look at, I don't see anything to come back to the board. If they're not able to, if they have to make revisions to the site, if they have to alter driveways, if they have to move the building, if they do anything like that to meet the stormwater management rules, then that would invalidate their approval, they have to come back for amended site plan. So that's why I suggested programming final with, you know, the ability to just work it out administratively if they're able to maintain the site plan.
And that would be in the motion.
Be correct.
So you have no problem sharing whatever information with Mr. Carmicel professionally?
Yeah, I'd be happy to meet with him. I believe your engineer is Bob Bruce, is that still accurate?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to meet with him and Bob and go through them if they have concerns. I would say that there will be another revised set of calculations, so it may behoove you guys to wait for that set to be generated, to sort of go through it with a fine tooth comb, but I'll be doing the same, making sure they meet all the rules. So.
I still see, you know, there's no reason to rush the final approval until we see what's going on. As you hear this gentleman testify, there's problems all over town. I don't have problems currently, other than when we have a heavy rain, but I don't want additional problems on my property that aren't caused by, you know, myself.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna respond. Good evening. We did attempt to talk to Mr. Carmicel before these plans were put forward. We actually had an alternate design for the stormwater. We tried to work with him, and he was not interested in working with us. We had to redesign.
Well, it wasn't that I wasn't interested in working with you. My engineer had issues, and I was told by the applicant's son that they would do what they wanted anyway. So let's, frame it in the proper perspective.
I want the board to understand, we did reach out to him initially. He was the next door neighbor. We did try to work with him. We came up with an alternate plan when we weren't able to reach an agreement on.
Which I've now had 3 days to review. 3.
But
They've had 3 months.
But as Mr. McGowan eloquently said, the bottom line is we have to comply with stormwater regulations. We have to comply with Pinelands. It's not just Mr. McGowan, it's Pinelands is gonna review the stormwater as well. And the applicant is absolutely open to any condition that says we need to meet those requirements. And if we don't, it creates changes to the site when we come back. But I don't see any reason to put off preliminary and final approval and just take this board's time for, you know, things that are really technical that are best for the community, the experts.
Yeah, just to be clear, for Mr. Carmicel's benefit, preliminary and final approval is not in effect if they cannot comply with the conditions, which would be meeting the state and city's ordinances on stormwater management. So if they're not able to comply with the current site configuration, the approval is effectively invalidated. It doesn't mean anything unless they can meet it with what they're showing. So I just want to make that clear. It's not, even though they have to have final approval, if they can't make the numbers work, they still have to come back.
And I would like the opportunity to review the numbers and make sure that, you know, from our perspective, they work as well before it's approved.
Yep.
I don't think that's being, you know, irrational or irresponsible. I mean, I just wanna make sure that there's not a problem going forward. Listen, I welcome them.
I think that you'll have time for input and feedback to correct any deficiencies or flaws that they may find in the plan. But historically and traditionally, the board doesn't work that way with the stormwater calculations. We leave that up to professionals because it's beyond our scope to even understand it. And they assure us that the calculations are accurate and that they're gonna work. If they don't work, that's a different story, but from what we're being told is that the calculations can be done and they will work properly.
Like I said, I don't see any reason that they have to be done. I mean, at the same time, without,
I understand
me
your
having a
concern, sir.
chance to, like, you know, review
Appreciate
what
your
they're, you
opinion.
know, proposing to do on my property. It's pretty reasonable, I think.
I don't know what more we can do for you, sir.
Well, I think you'd be people have an opportunity to review it.
We appreciate your comments. Anyone else from the public? Second call? Third call? Anyone else from the board, any questions?
I'll just speak, I understand his concern, and I think it's important to make sure we take the proper steps. We obviously have to protect his investment as a board, but we also have to look out for the new person coming in and their investment, and make sure it's amicable for both. And I'm confused a little bit on the best way to handle this, to make sure that we, both businesses' needs are satisfied without any impairment to them operating the way they want to operate. So I want for a little guidance here from you, Ryan, and Leo, on how do we do that to make sure that this is done correctly and everybody's satisfied.
Ryan, you said,
Brian just explained.
Ryan, you just said if there's a problem and something's gotta be changed, it can't work out mathematically, then it has to come back to the board, correct?
Yeah, I mean, again, to reiterate, generally the site layout is, you know, of the purview of the board and how things operate, and that the stormwater will work. Again, based on what we've reviewed to this point, I believe that he can make the stormwater management calculations work based on the configuration they have, the basins, the location that they are, the footprint that they have, and all that. The only change might be, again, the depth of the basin might be another foot and a half deeper. So I mean, if you are comfortable with the way that the site is now and the basin with the way that it is now, you know, assuming, let's add another 2 feet just to save. Assuming they could make the site work, the stormwater management calculations work with an additional 2 feet excavated from the bottom of the basin, you know, would you still have the same opinion of the application?
I don't know, but I do know that Egg Harbor Township, when the Super Walmart was built, that was held up for about 9-10 months as the engineers disputed the plan, and the initial plan that everybody agreed to was thrown out and a new plan was devised. So I don't want to see either party have to go down that path. Let's do it right the first time.
So,
Well, Brian, let me understand that the basin that is on the neighboring property, is that for like a storm event, that it overflows into that when there's excess rain or excess water?
yeah, so Greg's property at the front, between his building and Moss Mill Road, there is a stormwater collection inlet which leads to a basin that he has elsewhere. The current discharge for this site is overland to that inlet. So right now, water runs off the site and goes to that inlet in front of the building.
Just because of the natural.
Yeah, that's just the way the topography works. And to be frank, there's a little depression on the existing property now, so that has to fill up first and then it goes there. So part of what needs to be revised in calculations is reflecting the presence of that depression. Effectively, if there's an existing depression that exists, you have to model that as an existing basin. That's how it's accurate. So they'll have to go back and revise the calculations showing that there's an existing basin there, and then it overflows to that inlet in the front. And then, essentially, you only monitor your water up to your property line. They have to prove that the discharge rate, again, for the 210 and 100-year storms, is less than in the post condition it is in the pre. So if you're discharging the 2 CFS in the pre condition in the 2-year storm, you can only discharge 1 in the post condition. So you're limited to half the outflow of the 2-year storm in the pre and the post restoration.
So there's, once this building is built, if all the calculations are right, less water will leave the property than what's right now the way it's set.
So rates are regulated, volumes are not. So less rate will discharge from the site, not necessarily less volume. Usually you have less volume because you have to, just to make things work. And Pinelands has a separate requirement, which the city has also adopted, that you have to infiltrate the difference in runoff from the 10-year storm for all new impervious surfaces. As you can see based on the site, they have a lot of new impervious surface, so you have to infiltrate a lot of water during the 10-year storm, which I think by the time they redo it, you're probably gonna have no discharge in the 2-year storm, potentially no discharge in the 10-year storm. But by the time they route it through and apply the calculation. But again, that's all stuff that they have to demonstrate mathematically. There's, you know, a whole bunch of history and development to this point, how we got to our current stormwater management rules. And they were just revised in 2021, so the new rules are even more stringent. Pinelands just adopted their revised rules, which go into effect in a month. So they continue to get more and more stringent and revised over time. the broader point that I'm trying to make is that it doesn't really matter what these say for, have you guys ever reviewed assessor manager calculations that we've had before? So, as you kind of take my word for it as the reviewing engineer, that they either work or they don't. And, it's reflected in the footprint on the site. You know, the size of the basin, the shape of it, the way that it operates, that's all reflected on the site plan. If there's adjustments that are made to the calculations, that if that doesn't change at all, you know, I've never seen that weigh in as part of any opinion. So that's why I would suggest that, I'm happy to meet with anyone who has concerns through that administrative process, but it doesn't really, I don't think it rises to the level of needing to come back to the board if we're preserving, you know, the site and the layout and the configuration.
I've always trusted your guidance, and I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So I know what Eagle Township went through on that.
Sure.
That was, I'm sure you're well aware of the details on that, and that was not where we want to be.
That was a nightmare. And again, if we go through the calcs and they can't make it work with this configuration, they need to make the basin bigger or make any kind of changes, that invalidates that final approval, and then you come back for amended site plan. So given preliminary and final now essentially just gives them a chance to work with the picture that they've got now by tweaking numbers in this book. If they can't do that, if they have to change the picture to make everything work, then they come back for an amended site plan.
Thank you.
Any other members? Okay. Leo, you?
Yeah, any summation or?
I think we're good.
Okay.
It's late, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I was inclined to frame this as one motion, setting forth all the relief, one vote.
Sure.
Yeah,
Do you
I don't
want me to go
see
through
it.
the vote again?
I can take a stab at it, and if you think I missed something.
All right.
So, it's an application, what we need essentially is a motion and a second for preliminary and final major site plan approval. The use is permitted, there's 4 variances, C variances that they're requesting. They're outlined in Ryan's report. If the rear yard setback to the building itself, 50 feet is proposed, 75 feet is required. There's a side yard setback to the accessory trash enclosure, 25 feet is required, 16 feet is proposed. The parking space requirement, 56 spaces are proposed. Ryan's calculation was 91 spaces, that's the higher number, we'll go with that. I know Mr. Rush had a different calculation. And then the loading spaces, they're proposing 2 with 4 required. There's certain design waivers, and Ryan went through them in the report, but specifically they're requesting a waiver from having 2 driveways along Moss Mill Road. Two are technically required. The testimony was that there's only going to be 1, and that's all that we need. There's a waiver from the deceleration lane. Then the sidewalk requirement, the design waiver request from that. And then driveway width requirement as well. And then some landscaping waivers. There's a minimum 5-foot wide landscape strip required along all property lines, not going to do that. And then the tree planting requirements, canopy trees, 1, 2, and 1. 1, 2 and a half.
Yeah, 1, 2 and a half to 3 inch caliper.
Per 30 linear feet of property line, and evergreen trees, 1/6 inch to 8 inch tall evergreen per 20 feet property line. They're not going to meet that requirement. And then there's a waiver, a perimeter adjoining each building shall remain clear except for planting, pedestrian walkways, access and emergency vehicles. A couple of board members chimed in on that. We technically need a waiver requirement for that. And then the conditions I noted, of course, they're going to be subject to any other necessary outside approvals, Pine Lands
Peterson. Motion second, roll call please, Tom.
Mayor Chiavetti?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Michael McKenna?
Yes.
Mr. Molyneux?
Yes.
Mrs. Torres?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck. I know that the hour's late, but there's no other business.
Sounded like a good shoes back. And then what was the other thing? Oh, the trash. The state comes in and checks. And if it's not good, and they have to throw it out, and then they have to take it out to get rid of it. So what do you do with the whole plates when they do it? Do they? So how do they get rid of it? So he was saying it was just the roots. He didn't say there was anything else. He wasn't sure what it was. You would get it. It's not like this is 1970 when each crammed up the whole area. They just put the bugs. Is that all they do? And they just keep putting them there. They use it for other things. They put it in farmers and all that other stuff. You know, that's not legal. Well, that's not legal. Oh, wow. Yeah, but don't they have the oils in that? Can't they make oils? Not yet. Oh, the state has to do that. Oh, okay. They're going to. Because that's what people want. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I thought they did that.
He goes back and forth.
He's got lots of ideas, but.
He wanted to do the, card thing where they would hang their certificates up and they would fill it, like, with
Used auto dealer mall.
And then he wanted to change it to marijuana at one time, then he wanted to go back to the card, but have more.
Didn't we have a guy come in, informal and ask? I thought that was the new owner.
That was him.
Yeah.
I thought he got paid for that. Oh.
The used auto dealer, so that was a great version, it came in with a redevelopment plan. So yeah, that approval is still there, it's still valid. If he wants to do anything else, he's gonna have to come back to the board. I think last time I talked to him, he was like, oh, we wanna do 200 and something instead of 100 and something. Well, that's great, I'll have to come back to the board for amended approval, because that's not what we approved.
And then just last week, he had interest from one of his associates that they wanted to do a distribution or a grow facility there, and I believe, Ryan, you and I discussed this, that it's not zoned for that, obviously, it's highway commercial. They
Yeah.
can do distribution, but they can't do a grow.
Well, we had talked about, in the board's recommendation back to city council, it said that in redevelopment areas, additional cannabis-related licenses could be contemplated, and considered. So I said if he wanted to come back to the city and approach the city with a cannabis, cultivation or manufacturing or whatever, he could approach that via redevelopment plan, but it's not a permitted use in the zone.
Retail was approved on it, right?
There's one retail license about to be approved in the city, it's on Philadelphia Avenue.
Right.
So
Didn't we at the board say one on a bike and one on the other?
Correct, there'll be one allowed in the HC and one allowed in the RC. The RC one should be taken up as of tomorrow, I believe. But the HC one is still not.
Is that the one we are?
Yes.
And then last, that's the bonus.
I was gonna just say,
Well, you take that with the.
I know there's been multiple complaints about some of the parties or whatever you wanna call them, events they have there.
Events, yeah.
That when they came in front of us, they did speak to us that wasn't gonna happen. Is there something we can do to help the neighborhood out of it?
Well, Marcel and I have had a meeting with those new owners, because we get alerts all the time about, unacceptable they're having there. So we're monitoring that very closely. They haven't had one, as far as I know, recently, because they were shut down. But one was a twerking party.
I don't mind what they're doing, it's just that
No,
they're
and-
affecting the
and-
neighborhood.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
where.
if they wanna do what they wanna do inside the building, that's fine, but I know there's been issues with
Yeah.
with loud noise and.
And-
You have to call law
Yeah, that's what I
enforcement.
was gonna say, the
If
important
they have a
part is
complaint,
have
they
to
can't
call.
complain to you, they gotta call law enforcement, because once they do that, then they get over there and they know what the conditions of the resolution are.
Well, I know that.
But the thing is, that where people get confused, and what is happening now, and the whole police department knows this now, that when there is a, disruption of the peace, they are going to be cited automatically. Now, unless the resident calls in and says, this is what's going on there, the police cannot enter that building without obviously probable cause. If the call is made, which we've expressed to the residents, they can go in, there's supposed to be a supervisor on site, okay? If there's no supervisor on site, there's another one, and
Hours of operation.
hours of operation, okay,
And
that's
that
an
was all-
automatic citation.
Yeah, see, that was all in their resolution with us.
No, it's just,
And,
it's just.
and Show was getting a
you have
license
to-
for alcohol.
You have to
Well,
call
and I
in,
mean,
and,
it's like everything else, they put on the Good Joel and Tony show for us and tell us how great a neighbor they're gonna be, and here we are a couple of years later and they're not.
well, I went door
It's
to
a
door.
shame because
In the spring, I went door to door on St. Louis Avenue, 100 to the corner of the 300 block, Chicago, and, a couple, yeah. And I gave all the residents a sticker that says, if you see something, say something with the proper number of, the dispatch to call. Now, as far as I'm told from the chief, there have not been that many calls that go in there. I know a few people on St. Louis have called. It's not enough to cite them for the, nuisance ordinance that we have, but it, as I stated before, certainly enough to cite them, give them a citation for disturbing the peace. So if anyone, like Jack said, they tell you, call dispatch, report it, the police will go over them. And when there are suspicious activities, the police do monitor that area. So I haven't been alerted to anything that's been going on within the past month.
No,
I mean, this is
I-
months ago.
Yeah, mid-November, I know there was
Yeah.
a shooting at some point out front
Yes.
and other things, so.
And that's been
Leo,
investigated.
how much of this can we discuss?
I think we should, it's being
It's
addressed.
being addressed.
And as far as the agreements that we came up with on the resolution, they were all met?
So,
No,
They
that's
don't
the
have a
CO,
CO
that's the
yet.
CO issue.
yeah, they still not complied with their stormwater management. They have had some issues between Pinelands and their engineer taking a long time. Generally speaking, most of the resolution enforcement is handled by code enforcement. Most of the violations that we are discussing are outside of the normal code enforcement hours. So we have a situation where we have to rely on the police department to go back to a resolution, which is sort of atypical. It's
Yeah.
not, normal circumstance. So I think it took longer, given the handoff that needed to happen there for it to get to where it is now. But I think that the city probably has a much better handle on it now than it did initially.
And they do have to renew the TCO because it was,
Yes.
they expire within what, 30, is it 90 days?
Yeah.
And then, so we had to basically renew it because it did expire.
Yeah,
If they're not meeting the requirements that we set forth, why do they keep getting it?
Well, because they said their engineer did not address the situation. So the consensus was to save a lot of issues.
Yeah, they have been documenting progress. It's been slow and arduous, but they have been documenting progress. Their engineer has gone out, they've done borings, they have a plan, they submitted something to Pinelands. So it's been slow but steady progress. Had they, after a year of, since then, it's been slow and steady progress. If it gets to a point where it is stalled and there is no progress again, then yeah, that is definitely something we'll talk about.
Well, this is the third extension that they've got, or is it the second?
I think it's the second, but this would be the last. Yeah. This is the last.
And there's a storage container on the site that I don't think is in the resolution. That pod has been there for a year and a
volunteering your time. It's a long one tonight, obviously, and I know you're here because you all love Egg Harbor City, grew up here, you raised your family here, and I certainly appreciate each and every one of you, and thank you for your willingness to be on this board, you all do a fantastic job. And Donna and Leah and Brian, thank you too.
So we're all gonna go stand in the ventilator fan at the new panel.
Of all people, right? Of all people.
Try turning it. Show me how to do this. Turn it off.
So, when you come in, everything's gotta be hooked up. You gotta hook up the speaker to
That's the
here.
speaker?
Uh-huh. You gotta hook up.
It doesn't matter which port, doesn't
No,
matter.
then you gotta hook up this little camera,
Uh-huh.
okay? You plug in the plug for this down here. That's this plug.
That's for the computer.
Uh-huh,